In the small provincial estate of Ardell territory, in the middle of nowhere, a child was born. The man was very worried, but he wanted a boy. The old woman wrapped the child and said that the man's expectations and dreams had come true. The child looked like the landlord. The woman asked if the parents had already chosen a name for their son. The baby's mother said that they would name him Ruin. Ruin Ardell. She hoped that Ruin would become the light of this world. The boy himself was unremarkable as a child. While reading a book, he heard a man ask another to try to get as much seafood as possible. Ruin became interested and called out to Uncle Beggins. The man turned to him and asked what he wanted. The boy wordly asked the man not to go to the street near the South Mountain because he had seen a strange flow of mana there. Beggins was confused and did not know what to say. He asked the boy's father what these words could even mean. Beggins did not know how to answer either. Thunderstorm. Beggins ran into the building in the rain. Ruin's father was already waiting for him at the doorway, saying that he was very worried about him being late. The man ran into the building and said that he had taken a longer route and asked for forgiveness. Ruin's father wordly asked what had happened to him. Beggins said that he had managed to avoid trouble just now because he had listened to the advice of young Master Ruin. Ruin's father was at a loss and asked what that could mean. The man reminded him of what the boy had said yesterday about not going through the streets of the South Mountain. Only now had he learned that there had been an attack by beast men there. Ruin's father was very surprised and shocked to hear about it. Beggins continued to say that everyone who had been there was in grave danger, but thanks to Ruin, he was not among them. Ruin's father became thoughtful and the man looked at the boy and asked Ruin's father if he thought Ruin could sense the mana in the air. The man said that he found it difficult to answer this question. He wondered what would happen if it were true. If it were true, Ruin would become the future of Ardell. From that day on, the boy showed a stronger talent for magic. At 6, he could sense mana. At 7, he could already manifest it. When he turned 10 years old, the man solemnly said that he wanted to hand over the floor to the representative of the first years. He asked the audience to greet the boy. Ruin had surpassed countless children from prestigious families entering the Ignite Magic Academy, the best magic academy in the Radiant Kingdom. The solemn boy was called the best among those entering the academy. He was enrolled as the best applicant. Thus, he received the title of genius. This attitude weighed on Ruin a little, but he consoled himself with the thought that his name would raise the status of the family. However, it cannot be said that he was very successful in this. The man asked the boy to demonstrate the best skills among the applicants. Ruin tried to remain confident. On the very first day of classes, it became clear that he was far from the best and not even the second. The teacher demanded that he release his energy as quickly as possible, but the boy could not focus and release enough. Ruin did not understand what was happening and what he was doing wrong. All the students watched him with concern. He had a mana release disorder. Ruin realized that he lacked the innate ability to release magic even a meter from his body. For a mage, his body was literally the worst of the worst. It did not take long for the others to find out about his humble origins and his lack of talent for magic. Because of this, their attitude towards the boy quickly changed. One of his peers pushed him, and Ruin almost fell to the floor. One boy asked another if he was okay. Ruin remained silent, but the other continued to say that his friend had just touched a disabled person and could become one too. That guy's friend jokingly said that he needed to wash himself quickly to avoid this fate. He was immediately branded as a person who was incapable of using magic. He was considered defective because he was not even able to cast spells at the Magic Academy. His current status was lowered by the envious people. The guy who pushed him asked him why he was looking at him like that. He swung his arm, saying that he had no right to look at him because he was incapable of using magic. His status became the greatest pleasure that his envious people could ever get. Ruin was furious. He pounded the wall with his bare fist. The guy could not catch his breath and came to his senses that all this was happening in reality. He did not know if he would ever be able to become a magician. Ruin Ardell, the man who entered the academy with the best grades, more promising than anyone else. He was more diligent than everyone. All his advantages were forgotten at one place when it came to his curse. They said that the genius became disabled in magic. That's how it all ended. Ruin was in despair. More precisely, it could have ended that badly. He just thought that it all ended there. However, Ruin could not even imagine that in the abyss of despair there would be a place for a miracle. The notification said that the player artifact was activated. The status window was unlocked. The player artifact was activated. The guy continued to fall down, not understanding where he was now. He felt like he was deep underwater. Something told him that the guy was the avatar of the destroyer of worlds. Ruin did not understand what this could mean. He did not believe what he heard and did not know what to think. Suddenly, the guy was very scared when a large figure appeared in front of him. Ruin was speechless when he saw a strange figure with open red eyes. The guy thought that it was just a dream, but it was too vivid for a dream. Looking closer, he saw the figure opening its mouth and realized that it wanted to give him an order. A picture appeared in his eyes. He was transported far away from here. A few hours earlier, the training grounds of the Ignite Academy. This time, Ruin was called Mikkel. The man said that he only needed to create a fireball and hit the scarecrow with it, just like he had explained before. Heidel looked at him and thought that this was a very simple task that any student should be able to handle with flying colors. For someone who was unable to use magic, this was an almost impossible task. Ruin was desperate. He did not know if he would be able to use it this time. Heidel shouted at the guy and demanded that he start quickly. He realized that he should not stay now, because suddenly he might fail. Ruin began to concentrate on his hand, trying to isolate mana. He believed in himself and wanted to cope with this task at any cost. In one movement, he began to concentrate mana in his hand even more. The guys crowded around were shocked to see the size of this ball because the guy, apparently, had a lot of mana in his body. Heidel was silent. He was waiting for the guy to show himself. Ruin believed in himself a little and decided that if everything was the same, he would cope with this task. Suddenly he got very angry, because he realized that it had caught up with him again. His hand stopped releasing mana again and the guy did not understand what was happening to it. A second later, he coughed. From fatigue and exhaustion of the body, Ruin spat on the ground. Heidel asked the guy to show himself finally, but he seemed unable to do it. The man demanded that he release it from his body as quickly as possible. The guy said that the fireball did not leave his hand and he did not know what to do with it. Heidel continued to pressure the guy, because he was already in his senior year and should have known such basics. According to the man, if he still couldn't perform normal magic like a fireball, then he would simply fail the final exam. Heidel yelled at Ruin that he was destined to fail. The boy couldn't help but agree with him in his head. He clenched his fist and apologized, saying that he would try harder in practice. In this practical shooting test, they had to create 10 fireballs and hit the target multiple times. Ruin was unable to load even one whole ball into the target. The boy realized that he couldn't even count on being a third-rate mage. The boys made fun of him, not understanding how he got into the academy with the best scores. They kept telling him that he should give up, because, in their opinion, he was the main dumbass. The boy knew that because the best in the entrance exams was the offspring of a nobleman from the province, his peers from more prestigious families began to envy him and feel inferior. For the most part, this was the reason for the hostility towards him. Ruin realized that he could not endure their mockery forever. Reality, of course, deprived him of hope and began to destroy his personality from the inside. This curse was the only thing that held him back for these 6 years. Mana release disorder. Although Ruin held on well, all this time he involuntarily began to wonder how much longer he can hold on at this rate. In the hallway of the academy, the boys were discussing how their exam had gone. Someone from the crowd noticed the guy and shouted at everyone, calling him a dumbass. The guys who always picked on him said that he should pack his things early. The guy said that if he were in Ruin's place, he would be embarrassed to even show himself in public, but Ruin was more persistent. He asked him if knew what the younger ones called him. The guy replied that everyone called him a dumbass. According to the boys, because of Ruin, the senior class was not a role model. The boys demanded that he get the hell back to his province as soon as possible and laughed. Ruin remained silent. One of the boys said that nature usually rewards either with skills or wealth, but in his opinion, he was unlucky with neither. Another boy said that all members of his family were arrogant idiots who had never had anything. Before he could finish speaking, Ruin rushed forward to punch him. Swinging his fist as hard as he could, the guy slammed it hard into his opponent's face. The other guy was simply shocked when he saw his friend push back several meters with just one punch. Ruin was furious and demanded that he repeat what his opponent had said about his father. The guy seemed to have misunderstood his opponent's intentions and simply called him names while wiping away the blood. He did not believe that a man from a simple family was capable of such a thing. Ruin said that one should know when to stop and when to stop. According to him, these guys were nobodies to talk about his family. The guy's friend quickly rushed towards Ruin to punch him back. At the very end, before the punch, he did not expect his opponent to be so fast. Ruin knocked his opponent out with one punch. The guy fell to his knees from such force and clutched his stomach. His opponent was furious and watched him suffer. The opponent was shocked and did not understand how such power was hidden in such a dunce. The guy with golden hair began to use magic to take revenge on his offender. He insisted that Ruin had no right to even touch him. The guy simply did not believe that his opponent was going to use magic in the academy itself. The opponent was persistent and released the sphere right in Ruin's direction. It seemed that he did not care at all that he could be expelled for this. The opponent demanded that the guy die. Ruin realized that he could not even move. The teacher was already running towards them and demanded that they stop immediately. It was too late and Ruin touched the opponent's magic. He covered his face and did not understand what would happen next. Just as he thought, most likely, his end had come. He was the avatar of the destroyer of worlds. The status window was unlocked. The player artifact was activated and the guy saw a large figure with red glowing eyes in front of him. I did not understand what was happening to him or where he was. Ruin didn't know what was happening. The big figure opened its mouth and called out to him. It said his full name and the boy looked into its eyes with horror. He would have been sure that it was definitely his name. Suddenly the blackness began to fade and he began to open his eyes, hearing his name being called out again. Behind his eyes, when he opened them, Helen appeared. The teacher was glad that the boy had finally woken up. For a second, Ruin realized that everything that had happened to him was true. He decided to get up a little and asked where he was now. Helen tried to put him back down, saying that he was in the break room and needed rest. She kept saying that the boy needed to lie down and recuperate. Ruin said that nothing terrible had happened to him, he was just dizzy. He himself did not understand if he had lost consciousness. The boy did not understand what kind of figure it was. It seemed very real to him in that dream. Ruin asked how long he had been lying like that. The girl replied that she had been watching him here all day. She said that it was a great fortune that the guy had gotten off with such light consequences. Ruin asked if he was okay now. Helen said that they needed to check a few more tests and he himself looked pretty good for someone who had received a direct hit from a lightning ball. The girl said that he had no wounds or burns, even his organs were intact. According to her, she had encountered this for the first time. The guy did not understand how this was even possible. He knew that a lightning ball was a terrible magic that burned the body in seconds and he took a direct hit from it. Ruin did not understand how he was completely okay from such an attack. The professor entered the room and apologized for disturbing him. Helen said that she would go analyze the guy's tests since the professor was looking after him. The girl asked not to remain silent if something was bothering her. Heidel approached the bed and asked him how he was feeling. Ruin replied that he felt absolutely fine. The man replied that it was very good, but that a whole professorial council was being assembled for this occasion. He promised that his offender would first of all be expelled without fail. Heidel gave the reason. According to him, he was expelled for using combat magic with the intent to kill and also for spreading false rumors about the head of the family. He also treated Ruin unfairly and bullied him. According to the man, all of the above actions were taken into account when making a verdict. The guy lowered his head and said that he had also hit him. Heidel said that he would of course be punished too. Given the circumstances, he would be doing volunteer service for a month and that's all. Heidel said that he had one more question that he would really like to know about. The man wanted to know if the guy had an artifact. Ruin was very surprised to hear about it. He said that this was certainly not true, because if he had something like that, he would not be bullied like that by those around him. Heidel started thinking and assumed that, given the rarity and value of the artifact, the head of the boy's family would have already used it for his people. Ruin asked why Heidel was even asking about this. The man hesitated but decided to answer. According to him, he was sure that before the lightning ball overtook the boy, his body was surrounded by a red light. It was as if a high-ranking artifact protected Ruin, reflecting the magic. The guy did not believe what he heard. He knew what an artifact was but he could not believe such a thing. Suddenly, Ruin realized that this was possible, connected with his strange dream. He replied that he did not understand what had happened to him and certainly did not have an artifact. Heidel reluctantly agreed with him. The man headed for the exit, telling the boy to rest. Ruin really had no idea what had happened and the professor did not ask further. He was interested in what Ruin was thinking about now. The guy thought and realized that he had received an experience indistinguishable from a dream and that strange voice that was calling him. The voice said that the artifact was open and accessible. It also talked about some players. Ruin remembered that the statue had said something else, but he couldn't do anything with his memory. He remembered some status windows. Suddenly, the guy noticed it right in front of his head. Helen was already approaching him, holding some papers in her hands. Ruin realized that it was real. The girl asked what was happening to him and if he was feeling well. The guy said that it wasn't about his health but about something he saw right in front of him. He told Helen about some blue thing. The girl didn't understand what he was talking about because there was nothing there. She wasn't sure that the guy was sane. Ruin himself didn't believe that she really couldn't see this window. The notification table had all the information about him. The guy realized that only he could see it. He decided to come up with an excuse first. Ruin said that he must have squinted, but the girl said that it was not funny at all. According to her, the guy's tests were normal and he could return to the dorm. Ruin was happy and thanked her. The guy listed in his head that today he survived a lightning ball strike without consequences. He met a man with a red eye and an alternate dimension and got a status window that only he can see. Then the window said that he is the incarnation of Drakkar. The guy began to think that perhaps the mage's artifact was given to him. Now another strange window appeared before his eyes. It was some kind of task. He was required to prepare his body for increased strength through training. Ruin read the list and realized that physical activity was required of him. He did not understand how this could help a mage like him. Still, he did not doubt and decided to just try it first. Having hit with one fist, he saw that the strength increased. Having hit 2 times, the strength increased even more. Ruin realized that the number was growing and at this rate he would quickly reach his goal. After another hit, the number did not change and he looked at the window again. It seemed that the hit was not counted if there was even the slightest mistake in its execution. In this case, he decided to go through the training properly. It was night outside. Ruin was very tired. He was glad that he had finally finished. Sweat was pouring down his face. It was written on the window that the task was completed and his strength increased. Ruin was very surprised when he heard about the reward. He noticed something in himself. It was a strange feeling and it was barely noticeable. The guy felt it in his blood and it was something more than mana. He realized this feeling. The guy clearly became stronger after this training. He decided to test his strength in real life. With one blow, he broke something in front of him and realized that mana was gathering around his hand. The guy realized that strength and magic had become much more powerful. The speed of air resistance and strength felt completely different. The fundamentals also increased and now there should be a second reward. The status window appeared in front of his eyes again. The next task was a power circle. Ruin read and realized that he needed to replace mana circles with power circles. He realized that after this, his mana would be replaced by physical strength. Everyone who feels and studies mana has a circle around the heart, plays an important role in releasing, strengthening mana. The number of these circles increases depending on the accumulated mana that the mage can control. The boy had 4 mana circles. This is much more than is usually found in people his age. Still, due to his disorder, they are as good as 0. Suddenly, Ruin realized something. He felt that the mana circles in his heart had actually disappeared. In this case, the madly circulating force in their place were power circles. Ruin was surprised by the new feeling. Power circles were instead of mana circles. Ruin knew nothing about mages without mana circles. He did not know what would happen to him if he completely replaced his circles. The boy thought that then he could forget about life as a mage altogether. Still, it was too early to give in to the Caddon moods and he should first test them in action. The boy decided to use a fireball. He was surprised at how easily he created it in his hand. It was very fast, impossible, in his opinion. Ruin felt an unknown power in his hand. Seeing the size of the fireball, the guy realized. This was the power of the artifact. Ruin was given a unique chance. Since magic has a basic principle of operation, it takes an average of 10 seconds to release. The guy seemed to have the opportunity to skip this stage and create a fireball due to his internal strength. He knew that this was definitely the power of the artifact. After another training session, Ruin saw a window appearing next to him. He did not know what task to expect now. He read and understood that he needed to fill his body with magic to perform an attack. But he did not know how to do this. The guy assumed that Drakkar suffered from a similar disorder, so he fought by filling his fists and legs with magic. Ruin did not understand how he came to such a method. Suddenly the guy noticed that a new task had appeared for him. He was very surprised to hear about it. He had to hit the target. Ruin had not even thought about the physical force method yet. Until the last moment, he did not believe that he could become a magician with its help. The guy knew that he should still try to find his strength. He released a fireball in a matter of seconds. Ruin was glad that it worked. The task was completed and the guy gained strength. He sat down on the ground and decided to rest. Ruin was incredibly happy that he was finally able to complete the task. The guy thought about how before, every failure was at the discharge stage. Finally, he overcame it and was able to feel magic at full strength. The guy still did not believe that someone even came up with such a method. He did not know who this Dracra was. Of course, Ruin would like to find out right now, but his body is getting heavy. What surprised voices? Someone said that he seemed to have trained until dawn and literally fell asleep on the site. Ruin did not know what was happening and the voices asked to wake him up. The guy came to consciousness, constantly hearing these voices. Someone said that he was definitely not dead because he survived the lightning ball. Ruin did not understand why his head was so noisy. The guys crowded around him were very surprised by his sudden return. They asked him not to scare them like that again. Ruin got up from the ground and stretched, saying that they were acting very strangely, as if they had never seen a sleeping person on the street. The guys fell silent. Some guy said that this was not typical for a nobleman who entered a respectable academy. He asked if Ruin had been drinking. The guy sent them all and said that he was simply very tired and fell asleep on the spot from exhaustion. The guys were still perplexed. They talked among themselves, noticing that Ruin was acting strangely. My friend, one of the guys, looked at the place where the scarecrow used to be. He was very surprised that there was nothing left of the scarecrow. The guy suggested that it could have been Ruin. The guys did not believe it and denied it, saying that he did not know how to handle magic. The academy dormitory. Jason greeted Ruin as he entered the building. He was brushing his teeth and was a little surprised that the guy had only just returned. Jason asked if anything had happened to the guy, to which the guy replied that it was none of his business. Ruin knew that Jason was not hostile to him, although he was the eldest son of a famous family. Jason asked in a sly tone if the guy had really been with a girl at that time. He was a psycho, obsessed with alcohol and girls, which is why he constantly secretly left the academy grounds. Jason did not stop and said that the guy had not even had time to get struck by lightning, as he was already clutching his head. Ruin threw clothes in his face and said that he went to the bathroom and had no idea what he was talking about now. Relaxing in the warm water, he felt better. Suddenly, the guy remembered that he had an additional task that needed to be checked. He had to prepare his body through training. Ruin was surprised that the rewards remained the same, but the number of repetitions had doubled. The guy didn't know if his progress would continue at this rate. Still, he knew it wouldn't be easy. He was ready to do anything to become a mage. A month had passed since then. It turned out that the repeating task could be done once a day. But in contrast to the constant reward, the required number of repetitions grew from day to day. If the building couldn't be completed within a day, all progress was reset. That's why Ruin never missed a day of training. And yet, the guy saw some benefit in this. He was glad that the requirements for completing the tasks didn't go above 3,000 repetitions. Otherwise, he could simply die in the process. The guy ran up and jumped. Over the past month, he had been doing these training sessions every day. The guy even got a new skill. He was very happy when he read its characteristics. The guys were discussing Ruin's strange behavior lately. They didn't understand why he was sleeping during lessons, although he used to keep his eyes on the board. The other guy was outraged that this was all that he noticed. He said that Ruin had actually moved to the training ground and was now practicing kicks. One of the guys asked them to ignore him, because he had always been very strange. The guys assumed that the guy was trying to compensate for his disorder in this way, although, in their opinion, it did not work. Thus, over the past month, Ruin completed tasks and looked for any clues about Drakar's identity. Still, the guy could not find a mage with such a name in historical records. He collected books one by one, but found nothing. Ruin asked himself only one question, and he was interested in who Drakar was. The guy was really interested in who the person was who gave him such power. Someone called him from the side. Jason ran in and asked if he had heard any news. Ruin did not understand what had happened. The guy assumed that since he was just calmly reading books, it meant that he did not know anything. Ruin did not understand if something serious had happened and asked about it. Jason said that the head of the Ardal family had arrived at the academy. The boy was very surprised to hear this. He once again shook him with the thought that his father had arrived here. Ruin quickly ran to the exit. He ran along the corridor and shouted for his father, the man, talking on the side, and the father turned his attention to his son. He was very happy to see him. They had set aside time for them to talk. Ruin asked how his father was doing, because it had been 6 years since he had been sent to this academy. The man replied that he was doing well, as always. The boy asked how his sister was doing. His father said she had become quite an adult and had now begun to study the art of swordsmanship. According to him, the sister wanted to protect her weak brother, scratched the back of his head and said that he even felt awkward when he heard about it. His father said the girl had always been self-confident. Ruin turned to his father and was silent for a while. He said that he was doing well. His father did not understand what these words were for and asked again. The boy said that he was really fine and that no one was abusing him either physically or mentally. The father drank a cup of tea and thought about it. Gray admitted that he had actually come here to find out if the boy wanted to leave the academy. The man wanted to convey the idea that if he was having a hard time, the doors of the house were always open. He wanted to know what difficulties his son had faced during all this time. The boy thought about it. Ruin said that he would be frank in this conversation and told him that he had been treated very badly from the very beginning. He hurried to please his father by saying that he seemed to have found a way out of this situation. The boy suggested that they come to an agreement right away. He said that there was a practical test ahead and he was obliged to show a good result there. Ruin said that if he failed the test, he would do as his father wanted. The boy promised that he would get good results in the practical exam, so his father realized his determination and soon returned to the estate. And then the long-awaited day of the exam arrived. Everyone's attention was drawn. The beginning of the written exam on understanding magic was announced. The guys were warned that any violation would be punished by having the result reset. They could start working and the boy took the pen. The exam is divided into written and practical parts. The practical part, in turn, is divided into 4 more: aimed shooting, measuring magical power, real combat and one-on-one combat. As a possessor of a disorder of magic release, Ruin passed the written part perfectly throughout the training period. In the practical part, first place was always taken by another guy from an authoritative family. Ruin was sure that this time everything would be different. He believed that this year he deserved first place. After completing the written part in several days of preparation, it was time for the practical exam itself. Ruin was called out by a guy. It was Jason. He did not understand why he had been acting so strangely lately. He was really curious if Ruin had any plan for the practical part. The guy said that he was just trying out a new approach to magic. Jason was pleased and asked what he was going to do for this. Mikkel interrupted the guy's conversation. He was interested in what Ruin was doing there. The guy laughed at the fact that he was going to take part in the exam. According to Mikkel, it was useless with his disorder. Ruin said that he really came to take the exam, so he didn't see anything wrong with it. The guys started laughing at him. Mikkel put his hand on the guy's shoulder and said that he wanted to give advice to someone who had failed the exam 6 times. He said that instead of going out and humiliating himself, he could just give up. Ruin said that his advice would not be useful to him. Mikkel flew into a rage. He said that he did not believe that a person with such a disorder was capable of passing the exam normally. The guy did not understand what he wanted from him at all. He remembered that Ruin had not behaved so boldly and confidently before. It seems that he is annoying the guy, because the guy had not noticed this before. Mikkel promised to deal with him in a one-on-one fight. The first part of the practical exam is aimed at shooting. Officially, this stage is called the multi-target shooting test. Its purpose is simple. It is necessary to find out how many targets the future magician can hit at once. However, this year the level of difficulty of the exam was increased since the targets are constantly moving. Ruin watched and counted who hit how many targets. Angelia could not do anything at all. Due to previous failures, the average result was simply terrible. The other guys hit 3-4 targets at most. No one could have imagined that the results would drop so much due to a slight complication. Someone from the spectators said that the quality of the current graduates left much to be desired. The professors were clearly disappointed, but they tried to calm them down. Ehrlich said that it was Michael's turn and they could count on a good result. Finally, the guy entered the arena. Mikkel called out to Ruin and told him to watch his progress carefully. Of course, the guy could not know what his opponent was planning. There was a shout for the guy to start taking the exam. Mikkel intended to show the difference between him and that strange one. He began to hit the targets. The boys were delighted, but they still expected so much success from him. There was no longer any doubt that he would become the first again. The man came forward, saying that they had raised and brought up a worthy successor to the family. Erlich asked if his colleagues thought that this guy was the pride of their academy. According to him, he would certainly be this year's representative at the big festival. Tyrion asked the professor not to continue any further. He said that this level would be quite enough to assess the level of the current graduates. Heidel did not understand why they did not sit for a while and watch Ruin perform. Tyrion was very surprised to hear about the guy, because, in his opinion, it was difficult to pass the exam with such skills as his. Still, they decided to pay tribute to his persistence and watch the entire performance. Ruin stood in the arena, thinking that this was a great opportunity to show his strength. The guy asked him to begin the performance. Ruin agreed and began to create a fireball in his hand. A second later, he connected his other hand to this, creating many fireballs around himself. The teachers were shocked and did not understand how the guy could summon magic so quickly. The guys were also confused. Only Mikkel was furious. He turned to the others and reminded them of his opponent's frustration. According to him, he can create as many balls as he wants, but he is not able to release them. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Ruin in action. The guy used a skill to speed up his movements. Recently, he received a skill of refraction, which helps him move abnormally fast for 30 seconds in any direction he wants. In other words, now he is like a typhoon. All the targets were destroyed to pieces with just one movement. The teachers were shocked to see this. The students also did not understand how this was possible. Ruin was glad that he succeeded, but he could not fully believe it. All the targets were destroyed. The guy behind him wrote down the number 27 in horror. The audience was surprised to see the guy summon his own hand magic and hit the targets with it. No one understood how he managed to hit 27 targets because it was the highest result of all time for the academy. The guys did not understand how he could move so fast and whether he really hit all the targets with magic. Tyrion stood up from his seat and started applauding. He praised Ruin, saying that this performance was incredible. The guys were happy and started congratulating the guy too. Mikkel was furious at what he saw and did not understand how this could happen. Seeing the recognition and applause, Ruin was confused because he had not seen it for 6 years. The guy felt how warmly it spread in his chest. It seems that he always wanted to feel this. Erlich did not understand why the guy hit the targets using magic on his hands. In his opinion, this technique has nothing to do with magic. Heidel said that in his opinion the distinguishing feature of magic is its limitless possibilities. He noted that if everything goes as expected, it will no longer be magic, but mathematics. Erlich tried to counter with something again, but Tyrion asked him to be quiet. The old man said that today he saw a miracle created by a student. He called it flawless. Tyrion said that he saw other points of view among the professors. Erlich was furious that everything went to hell because of this guy. He could not even imagine that circumstances could turn out like this. Everyone dragged Ruin into the building in a friendly manner. The guy asked him to stop. The guys surrounded him and began to ask how he managed to pull off such a trick on yesterday's exam. They immediately decided to gain favor with themselves. Ruin understood that until yesterday he was an outcast, but everything changed literally overnight. He told Jason that he would move forward. Of course, the guy was a thorn in the side of some people. Opening his room, he saw Mikkel standing in front of the window. Ruin didn't understand what he was doing in someone else's room and called out to him. The guy didn't come back, saying that his opponent had gotten too proud, having gained a few points with the help of something that couldn't be called magic. He said that Ruin's impudence irritated him, so he decided to warn him not to dare to perform. The guy replied that his opponent was simply jealous, having been in high places for 6 years. Mikkel got angry and decided to continue the conversation with threats. Ruin calmly touched his hand and removed it from himself. He continued to hold his opponent's hand, squeezing it. Mikkel was horrified when he realized that there was a lot of power in his hand. Ruin said that it was important for both of them to graduate, and if he had a strong desire to crush him, then he should do everything fairly in a one-on-one fight. The guy let go of his opponent's hand. Mikkel said that no one had the right to compete with him. He couldn't believe that a man who had been at the bottom for 6 years had suddenly decided to get out. Ruin said that they should just wait and then they would know the winner. Mikkel demanded not to fail before the one-on-one stage of the fight and closed the door behind him. Ruin knocked down the corridor in a rage, confident that his opponent would not even reach their joint fight. Mikkel took his hand out of his pocket. He looked at it, remembering the force with which it was clenched. The guy was not sure that his opponent was a mage at all. The second stage of the practical exam is the measurement of magical power, the treasure of the academy and a rare artifact, of which there are only a few on the entire continent. 500 years ago, the Archmage Vroid turned Ogre Kingdom into an artifact during his lifetime. The King Ram, locked in the artifact, absorbs the mana of mages and is a magical punching bag. In the second stage, students were required to direct magic at it in order to get a high result. Ruin knew that it was only necessary to aim at the statue and use the spell in which he was most confident. He asked Jason about this and he agreed with him. The guy said that this ogre is famous for evaluating very harshly and getting a result higher than 20 from him is already considered something commendable. Some guy decided to use a thunderstorm on a statue. The statue demanded that he hide from sight because his strength was very weak. The ogre immediately suggested that the guy quit magic forever. The guys were disappointed with the result and said that everything was as usual. The statue asked the Mikkel to stand in front of her. The girl ran after the guy to take his place. She told him to watch carefully. The student used an ice ball to prove to the statue that she was strong. The ogre said that her strength was really impressive and he would definitely remember her. The girl was surprised by such an assessment. The statue corrected her words and said that she was impressed by the girl's hopelessness. The student was upset and burst into tears because she only got 2 points. She said that this was her best attack. Several more students failed this test. The leading guy asked not to show their emotions in front of everyone, but rather to give others a chance to show themselves. He said that Mikkel was next. The guy used strong magic to attract the statue's attention. The ogre did not feel the power. He said that he was very disappointed in him. Mikkel said that he was the proud third son of Jericho. He said his name in the hope that the statue would change its decision. Ogre said that the guy's father was the same idiot who begged him to inflate the scores. According to the statue, Mikkel had even less talent. The guy did not understand what he was talking about because he gave him 27 points. The previous one asked him to calm down and called the Mikkel. It was Ruin. The guy felt nervous before the test. He decided to pull himself together and cope. Ruin introduced himself to the statue and said his name. The ogre thought about it and said that he saw him for the first time. The statue decided that it was not important and asked the guy to begin. The guys were very surprised to see the burning explosive mana. In their opinion, using class 4 magic was still impossible for them. The statue also did not understand why the guy took such a strange stance. Ruin shook his head that he was starting an attack. He jumped high and swung. Ruin felt very confident. The guy watching this was shocked that he moved the magic from his fist to his leg and immediately exploded it. The guys were no less amazed and decided that such a spell should be attributed to class 5. They did not know what to think. Some guy agreed that Ruin was a class 5 mage, no less. At this moment, the participant himself was very surprised that his spell worked properly at the right moment. The guy noticed that the statue's reaction was very strange. He was very afraid that he would misjudged him. The ogre leaned over and asked who the guy was. Ruin said that he had already introduced himself earlier. The statue asked if the guy was Drek. The guy was very surprised to hear this. Ogre said that he had been waiting for Drek all this time and finally got it. The guys did not understand who the statue was talking about. They assumed that it simply confused Ruin with someone else. Over the past 2 months, the guy had reread all the available books but could not find a single mention of Drek. Ruin realized that the ogre did have some information about him. The guy asked the statue if it knew the person they were talking about. The ogre replied that he did. Ruin asked it to tell him more about him. The statue thought about it and found this question curious. He clearly could not believe that they had met his incarnation at the academy. The guy was surprised and asked again what incarnation meant. The statue asked him to say his name again. Ruin introduced himself. The ogre thought about it and said that they would definitely remember him. The guy who was recording the results asked the statue to tell him the guy's score right away before it left. Ogre said it was too much so he would tell him later when no one would be listening. He said the evaluation was over and the guy's magic wasn't something he could evaluate. The guy didn't understand what the guy was talking about, but he had to write down the results. He said that according to the rules, Mr. Kingham had to evaluate the students no matter what. The guy insisted that the contract should last for another 5,000 years, but Ogre interrupted him. He got really angry because he had been evaluating kids who didn't even look like magicians for years. The guy apologized, but still wanted to know what score to give Ruin. Ogre thought about it and said he would still give the evaluation no matter what. He asked Ruin what score he wanted, 0 or 100 points. The guy was shocked to hear such a number. He kept his cool and said that he wanted 100 points. The guy discussed his result. They could not believe it. Someone said that Ruin had been given such a grade for the first time in a century. The teacher said that the guy was in the thick of things again. Ruin asked what the professor was doing here anyway. The man said that he had heard about the news that he had received 100 points from Kingham and they had already reached the head of the academy. He handed over a piece of paper and asked to take it for himself. Ruin unfolded the sheet and read about the artifact room. He asked him what the hell that was. The teacher asked him to follow him. They closed the door behind them and went down. Ruin was going down some strange stairs and said that he had never seen them. The man replied that this was the only place in the academy where everyone was forbidden to enter. The guy did not understand what they were talking about and why he was brought here if everyone else was forbidden to be here. Heidel said that they were standing at the entrance to the artifact room and he was only allowed to go this far. Ruin asked if that meant he should go in there alone. The man hurried him and said he would wait outside. The guy opened the door, not understanding what was happening. He thought that his reward was waiting for him there and wanted to see it as soon as possible. Entering the room, he was amazed. Ruin saw so many objects that he had only heard about before. The guy assumed that this was most likely the Archmage's magical warehouse. A strange voice behind him said that the guy looked lost. Ruin was scared and turned around. It was the ogre who was insisting that the guy did not realize his true value. Ruin was surprised that he was no longer a stone statue. The ogre asked if the guy was surprised that he was not in the form of a statue. According to him, this was the only place where he was allowed to appear in his true form. He said that thanks to the ancient mana that filled this room, he could be in his body and not in the form of an artifact. The guy asked him what he meant when he spoke of true value. Ogre replied that Ruin simply did not understand his significance. He said that this was unnatural behavior for someone who used the same artifact as the player. The guy was very surprised to learn that he also knew about it. The ogre said that this artifact was very rare, it was the only one of its kind. He was interested in how the guy got it and what connects him with Dracula. Ruin said that he himself did not know what they were talking about and tried for a long time to find out. He remained silent and thoughtful. He told about a creature that wanted to become a god. One day, he came to the Sky Peak tribe, to which Ogre then belonged. He was short and small, which looked unsightly. However, his power was so monstrous that no one from the tribe could resist it. Moreover, he became stronger day by day, so even several ogres could not defeat him. They respected him, and he lived with them, and was a member of their tribe. Dracula taught the next leader of the tribe the language and magic. For almost 100 years, Ruin was surprised to hear about such an age and did not understand how a person could live so long. The ogre said that he was not a human. His true form was the black dragon Dracaragnia. Ruin could not believe what he heard. He learned that dragons actually exist. The guy asked if this information was true. The ogre asked if he knew where magic came from. Of course, Ruin only heard stories about dragons and considered them ordinary legends. The ogre said that Dracula himself was not able to use magic. According to him, he was creating a way to fight like the guy, filling his arms and legs with magic. He asked him if he understood what he was talking about now. Ruin assumed that Dracula was treated the same way as he was. He said that he understood him. Ogre said that Dracula had created an ability that only he could use. It was the ability to turn magic into power, which he demonstrated to him. With its help, Dracula became the most powerful being in the world. However, he was not satisfied with this and endlessly increased his power. This continued until he destroyed everything around him and himself. Ruin scrolled through this information in his head, realizing why he was called the Destroyer of Worlds. He could not even imagine how strong Dracula was to destroy an entire world. The guy saw that he had received a new achievement. He was awarded the title of Ogre's Friend. Ruin was very surprised by the sudden reward. He assumed that communication with such key heroes could not be idle. He also received Ogre's Rage. This skill increases strength for 30 minutes. Ruin noticed it and thought about it. He was holding a strange white ball in his hands, realizing that it was the avatar of his power. Ogre noted that the guy had received a reward for the building. He said that Dracula had a habit of chatting about such things while staring into space. Ruin handed the ball to the ogre and asked if he knew what it was. He thought about it and asked to take a closer look. He said that this thing looked very strange. The guy asked if he knew anything about this object. Ogre thought about it and said that it was not an object, but an avatar. Ruin did not understand what an avatar was. He continued to say that he was always near Dracula, so he could not ask him. He assumed that Dracula sealed him in the spirit stone when he died. This thing was the avatar of his power. Although it is called a spirit, it is different from ordinary spirits. Strand had a nasty character and asked him for endless power every day, but if his wishes were granted, he would promise unlimited power to the owner. The guy asked if the incarnation was born from this stone. Ogre said that it was, but there was no reason to worry. He thought that he would wake up soon. Paulus looked at Strand in horror and saw that he was breaking down. The guy was very surprised when he saw a small bear in his hands. He did not understand what this could mean. The small creature was offended and said that it was not a bear. Ruin was shocked. He did not understand how a bear could even talk. The strange creature threatened and asked not to call it that anymore. Ruin still did not understand who was in front of him now. He asked how a bear could even talk. The creature again tried to convey that it was not a bear. According to him, the guy had no right to even compare him to an animal. Ruin asked who he was. Strand replied that he was an incarnation unbound by form. He could be whoever he wanted. The creature drew attention to itself and said that it would now show its power. Ruin looked at it in surprise. Strand tried to do something, but nothing worked. He was very surprised where his power went and why he could not reincarnate. The guy still did not understand what he was doing. The bear suggested that the problem was that he was reconstructing with an empty stomach. He demanded to give him food, to which Ruin did not understand why he was so rude. The guy said that there was no food in this place and he did not even know what he could eat. The creature was indignant and did not understand why its current owner was so weak that he should not be able to feed it. Ruin was very surprised to hear that he was its owner. The bear turned away and went to bed, saying that he should wake him up when something interesting happens. The guy was still confused. The ogre was happy to see this creature because, according to him, 1,000 years have passed and his character is still like this. He said that when he looks at Ruin and Strand, he remembers the good old days. They reminded him of Strand and Dracula, whom he encountered in his homeland in the Sky Peak tribe. The ogre sat on the throne again and asked the guy what he would do next. Ruin did not understand the question and asked again. He meant the power that makes him stronger. According to him, it can guide a person on the right path or destroy a person. The reason why he wanted power was to protect his people from demons, to elevate the Ardal family name, and to properly declare himself to those who despised him. Ruin thought that this would be enough for now. He had a lot to protect and he would not refuse this opportunity. So the guy decided that he would live of his own free will, for his people, his family, and himself. Ogre praised him for his intention and said that he would see what he had done in the future. While Ruin had gotten a clue about Dracula's identity, his daily routine had not changed at all, except for one detail. He would call out to Strand and ask him to wake up. The bear immediately appeared before him and asked if there would be food for him. The only change in his life was that Strand was fed more. He was obsessed with food. He ate a lot of it and it was not ordinary food. After eating his fill, he said that he felt better now. The food in question is the power he gains from quests. Strand becomes stronger as the vessel grows, sharing everything with it. He now has access to a unique 1-star skill. This skill speeds up his development. Ruin gains an additional 100 power every time he becomes stronger. Strand was happy that his master would get double that when he got 2 stars. He shared that before the ceiling, he had 31 stars. Ruin was amazed, because that was a 31-0 power. The boy didn't even have 1,000 yet, but he already felt incredibly strong. He wondered how Dracula had reached such a level. He thought that there was a way to build up strength other than completing quests. Strand giggled and said that's why he was called great. He said that if the boy wanted to know the secret, he should give him a glass of water. Ruin asked him to shut up, threatening that he would no longer feed him. Strand looked guilty and said that he would tell him for free. There are many ways to become stronger. For example, you can take on more difficult quests. Strength is also given when creating items or finding an artifact. You can also boil ogre tendon and make an elixir. Strand said that none of these options suited Ruin. The boy was very surprised, because there were quite a few options. According to him, he first needs to gain at least 1,000 strength. Strand assured that the boy's body would not be able to withstand power growing so quickly. Ruin thought he had become stronger, but it turns out that he is only at the very beginning of the journey. In that case, his next goal is 1,000 strength. He must continue training. The guy trained every day to increase his physical strength and when it reached 930, The third stage of the exam began real combat. Stran asked the guy if today was really the test. Ruin answered that it was, and he had been waiting for this day for a long time, a test of real combat. Usually, mages attack from behind, so there is a chance that in the general chaos, the spell can hit their own. This test is to test how much mages manage risks. This stage was the most important. Jason used a fireball. The guys in armor did not understand what he was doing. They urged him to aim a knot at them. Some guy said that Jason was out of the competition. Knights were invited to help and conduct the exam to ensure the safety of the students and check compatibility with them. The guys laughed at Jason. The tests lasted for 10 days depending on the points received. The students were given different monsters. At the end of the last day, 13 students with high scores were identified. Since today is the last day of the test, everyone is wondering what kind of monster will appear in front of them. The guys did not understand what kind of noise it was. Their expectations were met and an orc stood in front of them. Orcs live in groups and are widespread throughout the continent. They are much larger than humans and have comparable intellectual abilities. They are cruel by nature, so there are constant conflicts between them and humans. You did not know how to fight him in this exam. They were afraid that someone would die at his hands. Heidel demanded that the mages remain sober. According to him, they should consider this a real fight and give it their all. The orc went on the offensive. He quickly ran towards the knights. Mikkel created magic spheres behind them to reflect his attack. He used a nice arrow. The opponent jumped back from his place and the magic did not touch him. Everyone present was shocked to see how high he jumped. Heidel demanded that Mikkel dodge. The guy did not know how to do it, because his whole body was shackled with fear. Heidel used a tree prison to protect the guy. The orc was tied up. He tried to resist, but the teacher's magic was strong. Still, he did not have time to touch Mikkel. He said that the guy should drop out. The man slammed his fist on the table. Erlich was very angry that Mikkel had failed the exam again. He thought that he should somehow prevent Ruin from passing the test. The man asked Tyrion if he planned to continue testing in the same spirit. The old man asked what he was hinting at. Erlich said that it would soon be Ruin's turn. Tyrion agreed with him and continued. The man explained that Ruin was the only student who had received a perfect score from King Ram. According to him, it would be unfair to evaluate him equally with the other students. Tyrion said that he understood his intentions. He said that, unfortunately, they did not have any other monsters prepared. Erlich said that they did have one. When the knights brought the orcs, another ogre was delivered with them. Of course, using an ogre during the test is very dangerous, but the professor's knights are present at the exam. Erlich said that he would really like to see. He was interested in what Ruin was really capable of. A long corridor appeared. The man leaned against the wall and looked away. The hero heard someone address him and say the man's name. Putting his hand forward, the professor said that before starting, he had to tell him something. Today his test would be harder than the others, to which the hero asked what he was talking about. Looking at the hero, Heidel said that the academy expected a lot from him since he gave him the highest score, so some people think it's unfair to give him the same monster as the others, therefore, it will be harder for him. The protagonist replied that he meant that too, to which the man interrupted him and said that he would not be fighting an orc. The hero opened his eyes and was surprised, hearing that but an ogre, to which he asked again. The bear grinned and said that his first real opponent was an ogre, it would be fun. The monster's hand was tightly chained. Raising its head up, the monster screamed loudly. Looking at it, Jason asked if this was the orc captain, to which the guy replied that no, it was an ogre. Frowning, the young man thought that an ogre couldn't be. The man grabbed the sword tightly and thought that he was asked to bring it. Looking at the monster, he added that he did not think it was right to use an ogre to test skills. How strong was that student? Outwardly, ogres look like orcs, but they are physically much stronger. They can break a skull or displace vertebrae with one blow. The guy gritted his teeth and asked if he was sure of this, said that even they, knights, had difficulty capturing him, to which the professor replied that yes, this was the order of the head of the academy. The knight grinned and said that it seemed that the academy liked to put their lives on the line. The protagonist took a step forward and said that yes, he would put his life on the line. Turning around, the knight asked what was in him. Looking at him, the protagonist said that Ruin, a participant in the test. The knight grinned and asked what he, looking at the protagonist, the knight thought that this guy was put against the ogre as if he could defeat him. Frowning, he added that if anything happened, he and the professor would protect him. But wait, where was he going? Looking away, the knight said that he was going in the wrong direction and then asked what he was doing. Turning around, the protagonist replied that he was preparing for the test, to which the man said that he was not there, he needed to stand behind. The knight was surprised and asked again, hearing that he would fight from here. The hero lowered his eyebrows and replied that his spells were somewhat different from the usual ones. Looking at him, the knight said that they would not be able to protect him if he was in front. This was not an orc, he was no joke. The hero replied that yes, he knew, to which the man asked why he was taking such a risk. The protagonist threw off his cloak and said that he was simply determined. The man watched the protagonist in confusion. Gulther frowned, thinking that he didn't feel any fear from him. He guessed that he really was different from the others. The professor extended his hand forward and told Ruin to get ready. The man snapped his finger and added that his test was beginning. Suddenly, the shackles fell off the ogre's hand. The monster rushed forward and screamed. The protagonist also ran towards him. The man asked him in fear what he was doing and thought that he was running straight towards the ogre. The man shouted loudly for him to stop and think about what he was planning. The ogre swung his hand and screamed. 2 flashes appeared in the air. Extending his hand forward, the hero screamed about a fireball. Ruin collided with the monster, flames appeared around them. Gulther crouched down, thinking that he had used a spell in close combat. The man covered himself from the flames with his hand. The student squinted from the smoke. The man raised himself and asked in surprise what. Smoke appeared in front of the knights. The thought arose that the student of the Magic Academy went on the attack. He hoped he was not dead. Suddenly, the image of the hero appeared through the smoke and the knight thought that he was alive. Looking at the protagonist, he added that how was he still standing. The professor grinned slightly. The knight put his hand on the hero's shoulder and turned to him. Looking at the hero, Gulther shouted that he should have let him know right away. He almost died. The protagonist apologized to the man. The knight was surprised and asked again, hearing that, but would he have allowed him to act like that then? Looking to the side, the protagonist said that now was not the time for talking. First he would complete the test. Smoke came out of the ogre's mouth and he growled. Raising his hand, the man said that he should step back. He is strong, he understands, but it is too dangerous. Gulther grinned and added that he should stay aside until they figured everything out. The man took a step forward. Suddenly, the hero beat him to it. Looking at the knight, the protagonist said that this was his test, to which he asked again. The protagonist frowned and added that they should let him complete it. Looking at the monster, Ruin thought that he did not know how this happened. An ogre 5 times larger than him stood in front of him. The hero frowned and added that he had to fight against it. Looking straight ahead, Ruin thought that there were 2 reasons that gave him courage. The title of Ogre's Friend appeared. The effect of this title increases the likelihood that ogres will not show hostility towards them. The effect of this title allows him to communicate with ogres, and the hero thought that the first was his skill, namely the title received from the man, which allowed him to communicate with ogres. The monster's eyes glowed red and he said that he should not come near and free him, to which the protagonist thought that he understood what he was shouting. Ordinary people only saw a ferocious monster, but not him. This ogre was scared because he was surrounded by mages and knights. An emergency task appeared, time to fight. He faced an enemy he could not avoid. Let him subdue the enemy faster than the others. Goal 1 is to hit the enemy with a fist. Goal 2 is to defeat the enemy, reward strength plus 30, player's eye skill, to which the hero thought that the second was a task that suddenly appeared. The protagonist smiled broadly and thought that a wonderful reward for him, forced to do the same task every day, a 3-day reward at a time. Ruin suddenly rushed forward. A flame appeared in his hand and he thought that he had no reason to hesitate. The protagonist struck the monster with a fist. The ogre looked at the protagonist in fear. The monster was surrounded by flames. A notification appeared that the first goal of the enemy's fist had been completed and Ruin said that it was not all yet. The ogre said furiously that he would kill him. Suddenly the monster jumped up and swung. The ogre was rapidly approaching the hero. Looking down, the monster shouted that he would break his head. The protagonist deftly jumped back from the blow. Ruin gritted his teeth and thought that he needed to find his weak spot. Rushing forward, the hero added that refraction. The knight was surprised and thought where such speed came from. Looking forward, Ruin thought about getting closer. Flames appeared on the hero's hands, striking his stomach. The hero added that he would also hit the vulnerable point. Frowning, the knight thought that he did not flinch against the ogre, Who was he? The guy looked surprised and asked what was going on, to which the other replied that he should wait and see. The protagonist attacked and the student shouted that the ogre was fighting back. The monster clenched his fist tightly. The protagonist clashed with it in battle. Suddenly, Ruin struck from his knee. The ogre grabbed his leg sharply. The protagonist flew back. While in the air, the hero did a somersault. Ruin landed on the floor. Suddenly, the protagonist opened his eyes and was surprised. The hero dodged the ogre's blow. The protagonist landed behind the monster. Turning around, the monster said that the rat was dodgy. Suddenly, Ruin jumped up. The ogre was perplexed. The hero struck the monster from behind. Suddenly, the ogre fell to the ground sharply. Ruin jumped on top of him. Looking at him, he thought that it was time to end this. The ogre's rage skill increases his strength for 30 seconds. Looking at the hero in fear, the monster asked if he was even a human. The ogre's eyes widened as he heard that he didn't expect him to answer. Looking at the hero, the ogre asked him what he understood, what he was saying, to which Ruin replied that as he did, what he was saying, wasn't it? The ogre said that he did, when suddenly the hero shouted about explosive burning mana and struck. The effect of the rage skill strengthens the blow, switching to berserker mode. The protagonist furiously clenched his teeth. Flames spread everywhere. The ogre lay unconscious. Looking at him, the protagonist thought that this was all. The bear, looking straight ahead, thought that he was not bad, maybe even better than he expected. The protagonist stood in the middle of the flames. It was heard that he really defeated him, he thinks, yes. The students joyfully raised their hands and shouted that keep it up, it was cool. The man frowned and thought that he really won. Looking straight ahead, Tyrion smiled. All the knights gathered around the monster. A question was asked that he defeated the ogre on his own. How was that possible? Using his arms, the knight turned to the hero and asked who taught him to fight, to which Ruin replied that no one. The man frowned and asked what he wanted to say, saying that he learned it himself. The protagonist gritted his teeth and replied that he did. Stretching his hand forward, Ruin asked if it was possible to find out the result of his test. Looking at the hero, the professor thought. A dead ogre appeared, and Heidel said that he personally did not think that he would be able to defeat him, but he did not even give a chance to intervene. Standing in front of the hero, the professor said that he again exceeded his expectations, to which the hero said, that is to say, a training field appeared. The man said that yes, he passed. The protagonist grinned slightly. A notification appeared that the task was completed. The goal was to punch the enemy. Defeat the enemy. The reward was the player's eye skill, strength plus 30, received. The protagonist looked in surprise and thought that a minute, the player's eye, it was written that the passive skill was maximum. With the help of the player's eye he received the ability to see the nature of everything. Now he can collect and digitize information. Now he can feel surveillance and track the invisible. Looking at the bear, the protagonist heard the player's eye, which means that he has now become a real player, to which the hero asked that she knew this skill. Grinning, the bear said that of course, this is something that only a player can have. Standing on the hero's shoulder, the bear said that enemies hiding themselves with the help of stealth or invisibility magic will be visually different for him. A faint outline will be visible around them, to which the hero said, which is quite useful. The hero was surprised to hear that the mini-map was unlocked, to which he asked again. When the map appeared, the bear said that with its help it is possible to see everything in a radius of 500 meters. How so? A message appears saying that he can see the window of the desired target status. The information available for viewing depends on the level of the target, to which Strang folded his hands and said that there are even more surprises. Looking straight, he added that let him look at the defeated ogre using the player's eye, to which the hero asked what to look at the ogre. Looking at the monster, the protagonist thought that the player's eye, it was written that the ogre is a shoulder blade, lives in Thunder Mountains, is distinguished by protruding shoulder blades, is smaller than ordinary ogres. In addition to a softer disposition, it is also weaker than other representatives, to which the hero thought that he would be able to see the state of the target. Grinning, Ruin said that it is impressive. Looking at the man, the protagonist thought that it was necessary to check the professor. It was written as a 6th class magician, not yet available for reading. Continuing to look at the man, the hero said that there was something he couldn't see, the information was limited, to which Strang said that he couldn't get information about people much stronger than him. Raising his hand, the bear said that as his strength grew, so would the amount of information available for viewing. Putting his hand to his face, the protagonist said that it was clear. After completing the test with a real fight, rumors that he had defeated the ogre spread throughout the academy. Sitting on a bench, Jason asked how it felt to have everyone talking about him, to which the protagonist said that he didn't know, it was still new to him. Suddenly, someone behind the hero said that he was asking for forgiveness. Looking straight ahead, the girl asked if he was Ruin. Standing in front of the hero, the girl said that he had performed amazingly in the third stage of the test, let him take it, and the other said that he should eat it if he was hungry. The girls began to leave, the hero looked at them. The protagonist lifted the bag and asked what he wanted, to which the guy asked again in surprise. The guy angrily clenched his teeth and said that it was terribly disrespectful to the girl who overcame her embarrassment and packed him a snack, to which Ruin asked why he was so wound up. A tear appeared in the guy's eyes, and the protagonist thought that this guy, Jason, looking at him with the help of the player's eye, sees that he has high potential. It was written that Jason, a second-class mage, has high potential. Looking at the guy, the protagonist thought that over the past few days he had tested everyone in the academy, and besides him, only the guy had high potential. Looking to the side, the protagonist said that he should try a little harder, and then, he is sure he will show a good result on the next test. In the yard, it was heard that somehow it was suddenly, imbued with his sympathy, to which the main character replied that no. He just wants to say that he has high potential. He has good skills, so all that remains is to regain confidence and work harder, to which the guy asked if it was true. Sitting next to him, the main character said yes, and let him not spend all his time on games, to which Jason replied that it was good, that the next stage's goal would be to get into the top 10, it would be problematic. Looking at the hero, the guy asked to let him listen, is it really him, said that sometimes it is hard to believe, to which the hero asked what do you mean? Raising his hand, the guy said that he was just wondering if he is the same Ruin, whom he knows and with whom he has been closely communicating for 6 years, to which the hero asked again. Raising his head, the main character thought that well, even though he sometimes finds it hard to believe, can understand. A flame appeared in front of the main character and he heard that there had been some rumors about him lately, to which the hero asked again, to which the guy continued that he would push Miguel aside and become not only the best graduate, but also a representative of the academy. The guy was surprised to hear that he was not interested in this, so they went inside. The guy caught up with the hero and asked how could he not be interested? He said that this year was the year of the Great Festival. The Great Festival, in the 5th month of each year, representatives of famous academies gather together and determine the best among them, holding a magic festival. And once every 8 years, an Olympiad is held, in which participants compete for the title of the best magician. The Great Festival is called the intersection of these two events. This is a national competition for the best students of the most famous academies. To win this festival and the academy that he represents, not only receive a huge cash prize, but will also be able to acquire various privileges. Therefore, there is a limit on the number of participants, 1 student for individual competitions, 30 for group competitions, so 31 participants can compete from the academy. The protagonists thought that the one who was chosen for individual competitions becomes the representative of the academy. In the cafeteria, they heard that they wonder who will become the representative this year, Mikkel again. Sitting at the table, the guy said that of course, it will be Ruin and the other said that yes, he, besides, is the only magician who received 100 points. Holding a fork in his hands, Jason said that let him remember all the times when Mikkel took part in the magic festival, and asked that they at least remember his performances. Sitting in front of him, the protagonist said that perhaps there is nothing to say about group competitions and in individual ones he was last 4 times out of 5. The guy said that because of him they were dubbed the last academy, the academy of the last place, unable to perform with dignity in either individual or group competitions. The students were walking around the cafeteria, and someone said that the only way to get rid of this guy was to send Ruin or he was wrong, to which he was told that no, I agree. They asked what Ruin himself thought. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist said that the exam was not over yet and then thought that it was too early to be confident in expecting anything. In the end, the participants of the Great Festival are chosen based on the results of the first semester exam and the recommendations of the faculty. There is still a 4th stage ahead. He was 1-on-1 against Miguel. The protagonist frowned and said that therefore he needs to focus on the next test and then thought that all he can think about is beating him. For days after the end of the 3rd stage, the guy suddenly jumped up. The protagonist kicked. It was written that he had received 1,000 strength. The achievement preparation was received and Strang raised his hands and said that finally, he had been waiting for this day and asked that now they would start raising the level. The bear looked up, it was written that the repeating task had advanced to level 2. Suddenly Strang jumped up. The hero looked at the pet in surprise. Flames were flying around the bear, it was written that the difficulty of the repeating task was doubled, the reward was tripled. The bear swallowed something. He spread his arms to the sides and flew up. Lightning was abundantly emitted from him. Looking at him, the protagonist wondered what this flame was. With his eyes wide open, the protagonist asked what it was. The guy stood and looked out the window. The man frowned and thought, damn, in the end it brought him extra points. A battle was shown and the professor added that Mikkel would be able to win against Ruin. The protagonist looked at the guy and the man thought no, it was unlikely. The professor lowered his head and thought that not only his participation in the great festival was at risk, but even the place of the best graduate, the guy's family should be at the top of the academy. Gritting his teeth furiously, he added that no matter what, Strang stood in the middle of the fire, the avatar of strength, countries advanced to rank 2. A flame appeared in the protagonist's hands, he received plus 200 strength as a reward. Looking at the bear, the protagonist said that it seemed to have grown. Stretching his hand forward, Ruin asked what happened, and said that thanks to him, his strength quickly reached the indicator of 1200, to which Strang objected. Smiling widely, the bear said that this was just the beginning. I bet that the difficulty of the tasks and the reward had also increased. Looking at the menu, Strang said that they would see. It was written about the repeating task, body training 2, he had reached the basic level of physical strength needed for battle. But the training never ends, let him continue to move forward, punch 0 out of 5000, kick 0 out of 5000, roundhouse kick 0 out of 5000, 15 kilometers run 0 out of 1, real combat training 0 out of 1, reward strength plus 30. Putting his hand to his face, the protagonist said that he had already done the increased number of repetitions so it would not be difficult. But looking at the bear, the protagonist asked what kind of real combat training. Raising his hands, Strang gasped that he remembered their first meeting, he said that he could become anyone. Standing in front of him, the protagonist said that yes, he remembered, and Strang said that now he can transform, but for now there are limitations. When the training camp appeared, someone asked what then, can he take the form of a human, to which Strang replied that yes, when he reaches the 5th rank, but perfect transformation will be difficult in any case. The bear grinned, hearing that in this case, who can he transform into now, to which he asked what he wanted him to show. Suddenly Strang began to spin around, the speed of spinning began to increase. Suddenly a strange image began to appear. Looking at the creature, the protagonist asked what this scarecrow was. Standing in front of it, the hero heard what and what kind of reaction it was, to which the protagonist replied that he should forget it, he just expected something a little different. Their battle appeared, and Strang said that he should not look down on the scarecrow, asking that he at least knew how useful he was when he first started real training. Standing in front of him, the protagonist asked what the real ones were, so he was acting as a dummy, to which he replied that yes, or rather, the role of an assistant in completing the task. The scarecrow grinned, hearing that it meant he needed to train every day in a real fight with him, to which he replied that yes. Smoke appeared around the scarecrow and he said that since he was still weak, he was a 3rd-class mage by level. Strang grinned and said that, however, when he regained his former power, everything would be possible. Soldiers appeared, and he added that if he wanted, he could even turn into a demon or a dragon. Putting his hand to his face, the protagonist said that they would start training right now, to which Strang asked what is who. Grinning, the protagonist replied as a mage. Strang exclaimed in surprise and said that was good. Suddenly, a charge appeared in his hands. The bear held a staff in his hand. Standing in front of the hero, he said that even if his magic hit him, it would knock him back at most, causing no damage, to which the hero asked what about him. The hero grinned, hearing that he could attack as much as he wanted, to which he asked, like that, and then thought that he really was the perfect training partner. The flame spread around and Strang said, okay, he's attacking. The protagonist began to run away. Suddenly, Ruin jumped up. Looking straight ahead, the protagonist thought that like him, Mikkel was probably training right now and couldn't wait for their fight. Looking at the sheet, the guy turned to his beggins and said that this brat was annoying him, and asked what he should do. The man stood in the distance and said, damn boy, ask that he really should say that. Let him be at least a little stronger. Turning around, the guy said that he didn't think he had the right to be indignant if rumors were to be believed. Then it was he who contributed to Ruin getting high scores, to which the man asked again in surprise. Frowning, Mikkel said that he suggested putting an ogre against him. Clenching his fists tightly, the guy added that thanks to which he got the best possible result. If their family found out about this, then he would clearly be in trouble. The man angrily clenched his teeth and asked why the damn boy was blackmailing him. Looking down next to the man, the guy said that if he didn't like it, he should stop talking nonsense. It would be better for them to think together how to fix the situation. Looking at his beggins, Mikkel said that if he became the representative of the academy at the great festival, to which the man replied that he would not, he should not worry, he had an idea. The man handed him the flask and told him to take it. Mikkel looked at her in surprise and said that it was the awakening herb, the flaming flower. The awakening herb, the flaming flower, grows in the northern territories of hallucinations and is a rare and valuable medicinal plant, sometimes used to create special elixirs. Erlich extended his hand forward and said that if he drinks this, he will receive the effect of awakening. It will significantly reduce the time of invocation of spells, to which the guy replied that but as a side effect he will experience pain and will stop distinguishing between his own and others, right? Smirking, the man replied that yes, to put it simply, he will not see anything. It seems that he does not sleep in his lessons. Holding the flask in his hand, Mikkel asked but why is this, he really should drink it, to which the man answered him yes. In the garden, they heard that he had gone crazy, to which Erlich replied that he had found a reason to complain. He had already lost to that guy and now he wanted to be expelled from the family in disgrace. Looking straight ahead, the guy said that but it was still a risky undertaking. The professor knew perfectly well what he was capable of. If he noticed changes, he would not remain silent. Grinning, the man asked what he had forgotten. Who was in front of him, said that testing for drugs was his responsibility. Extending the flask forward, the man said that so let him take it, this potion will hide the fact of taking the flower. Putting the flask in the guy's hand, he added that he should drink it after the first one. Frowning, Erlich said that he should not be afraid, they are a family and this is their way of moving forward. The guy was at a loss, listening to what, will he do it or not? Finally, the day of one-on-one fights arrived. The exam stage was held in the Mana Barrier Arena. The students watched in amazement. It was heard that every year during the one-on-one fights the stands were filled to capacity. Finally it was time for the last battle. The protagonist was warming up his hands. It was added that Ruin was against Mikkel. The guy took a step forward. Looking to the side, the protagonist thought that the last stage of the exam was finally here and he was fighting against Mikkel. Looking at the hero, Strang said that the opponent knew that he would try to close the distance. If he was ready for it, it would be difficult for him to fight. Running, the protagonist thought that but if he could still get there, to which he replied that then yes, one blow would be enough. The guys looked at each other. It was said that since this test was as close to the conditions of a real fight as possible, various geographical objects were placed in the hall. Looking down, the man asked that they were ready, to which they replied that they were. The protagonist looked at the guy in surprise. Frowning, Ruin thought that this bastard. The guy clenched his fists furiously and the hero added that his condition was far from normal. Looking to the side, the protagonist thought that he was not as important as usual. Something was wrong here, he needed to check with the player's eye. The protagonist looked at the guy and used the player's eye. It was written that Mikkel was a third-class mage, high potential, dual summoning feature, hidden berserk special state. The protagonist gritted his teeth and thought that Berserk had never seen such a notification. Besides, in a hidden state he took something so that others would not find out that he had drunk a certain drug. The man folded his arms and the hero continued that before the exam, drug tests were carried out. Wait, Professor Erlich was responsible for this? What if he, being his beggins, somehow helped him hide the fact of taking drugs? The man spread his arms to the sides and said that okay, the only forbidden magic in a duel is black magic. Any magic based on the 4 elements is allowed. Points are awarded based on the level of magic that hits the enemy. The man looked away and added that there was no need to worry about his opponent. They were currently in the Mana Barrier Hall, where the effectiveness of magic was reduced by 99% and asked if there were any questions left. The protagonist raised his hand, to which the man asked what was going on. Looking at him, the protagonist asked what would happen if it turned out that someone had taken a forbidden potion. Standing in front of him, the man replied that they would be disqualified from taking the exam and would fail, depending on the severity of the violation. At the examiner's discretion, various punishments could be considered, including expulsion, and then asked what but why he was asking that. The protagonist turned away and replied that it was just that. Luring his hands out to the sides, the man shouted that it was good in position. Lowering his head, Ruin thought that he had no evidence now, only he could see the status window so no one would believe him. Frowning, the protagonist added that they needed to get some ironclad proof. The protagonist stood opposite Mikkel. The man shouted that it was time to go. The boys rushed towards each other when they heard that they had started. A green glow appeared around the boy and he shouted for Ruin to die. A plant began to grow around the hero's leg. Suddenly the plant suddenly snapped. The students looked in surprise. It was heard that this was how he got free so quickly. Michael's spell did not work on him properly. Rushing forward, the protagonist thought, what a great thing, Mana Barrier Arena reduces the power of mana, but does not affect his strength in any way. A skull appeared above the boy and he shouted that he thought he would stop there. The skeleton released fire when the boy shouted about fire breathing. The hero deftly jumped through the flames, using acceleration. The protagonist rushed forward. Ruin ran behind a stone. The hero slightly peeked out from behind it. Looking straight ahead, the protagonist thought about the reduction in summoning time and increased mana collection. Such effects have Michael's potion. The guy smiled broadly and shouted that it was enough to hide. Let him come out. Looking away, the protagonist thought that he was more excited than usual. Now he was sure that he'd rank. A plant appeared and the hero continued the herb of awakening, a flaming flower. The guy laughed loudly and told Ruin to come out, to which the hero thought that hand tremors, excessive expression, suppression of pain receptors, decreased ability to distinguish between opponents and comrades, all matched up. The hero frowned and thought that only a decrease in sensitivity to pain remained to be confirmed. Standing in front of him, the protagonist said that it was not surprising that he was so sure, and asked that it was all because of this, yes, to which Mikkel asked again. Grinning, the protagonist answered that it was because of the flaming flower. The guy was surprised to hear that. Well, it doesn't matter, it won't stop him from defeating him. The hero stretched out his hand and said that he should get ready. The protagonist rushed forward using refraction. The guy looked scared and thought that damn, he was too fast. The protagonist was approaching Mikkel. Looking at the guy, the protagonist shouted that it was useless. Suddenly, a huge ice wall appeared in front of the guy. The professors looked in surprise. It was heard that this was some kind of magic, and was it magic at all? It caught up with him in an instant. A monster appeared and Mikkel shouted that he should bite, third-class magic, a fire lizard. The protagonist swung his fist and shouted about an earthquake. Suddenly, an explosion went across the entire battlefield. The lizard flew up. The students exclaimed in surprise. It was heard that he defeated the fire element with an earth spell. The boy screamed in fear that no. Suddenly Mikkel raised his head up in bewilderment. Looking at the main character, he screamed for him not to come closer. The main character grinned and said that he should not be such a softy and get it. Looking at the hero's hand, the boy asked. The main character flicked him. The battlefield outside appeared. Suddenly a bunch of flames appeared in front of the hero. The students watched the battle with delight. The Ruin's father smoke slowly dissipated. The main character looked straight ahead. The boy's eyes glowed red and he said that he should not look down on him. The boy was talking about a small flick when suddenly the hero hit him. The boy screamed loudly and the hero rushed towards him. Suddenly Mikkel fell to the ground. Lying on the cracks, the guy laughed and asked what he thought could defeat him with such a weak blow and said that it did not hurt at all. And the hero thought that he was still conscious, even after such a blow. At this rate Mikkel could die from accumulated injuries. The hero grabbed the guy by the shoulder and added that it was dangerous to continue the test. Suddenly, the hero called a shackling tree on the guy. The protagonist raised his hand and said that Mikkel used a prohibited drug. Standing in front of the protagonist, the man asked what he meant. Mikkel used the drug, he is sure of it, and said that if it is a lie, he will be disqualified. Looking at him, the protagonist replied that yes, he is sure, because the use of the drug can always be hidden by others. The man was confused, hearing that either the inspector can turn a blind eye to the violation, to which he replied that he wanted to say. The protagonist said that the one who can get several rare materials for his favorite, and the one who conducts drug testing before the matches. The man was surprised to hear that in the entire academy there was only one person who fit that description. Suddenly the professor disappeared and the hero asked that if you think about it, Professor Ehrlich is Michael's Beggins, right? To which the man replied that he should wait. In that case, the professor really is. The man suddenly ran up to them and asked if he even understood what he was saying. The professor angrily asked that he was claiming that Mikkel had taken the drug and he had turned a blind eye to it. Grinning, the protagonist replied that he did, and he could prove it, to which the man asked again. The professor said that great, then they would conduct another drug test, to which the hero interrupted him and said that it was useless, he had given him a special elixir to hide the fact of taking it, hadn't he? Looking away, the man asked what in that case, what he was proposing to do, he said that he could prove everything. The protagonist put his hand on the tree and said that he would demonstrate it now. Suddenly, a bright glow appeared in front of them. The protagonist stretched his hand forward. The tree was incinerated, and the hero said that such was the force of the flick he gave Mikkel. Looking straight ahead, Ruin said that even if we assume that Michael's magic was stronger after practice, he continues to laugh and remain conscious after such a blow, which is abnormal. In his current state he has at least a concussion and at least 4 broken ribs. The guy laughed loudly, and the hero added that but he continues to laugh, as if he does not feel any pain. The professor was amazed to hear that he still denies the obvious. Suddenly Tyrion turned to the professor. The man looked straight ahead furiously. Tyrion shouted, "How dare he do such a thing on the sacred territory of the exam? Let him go to his office." The professor exclaimed in fear. The guy, being tied up, laughed. The events of the 4th stage passed through the academy like a storm. They heard that Professor Ehrlich was fired. It was true, sort of, and Mikkel was expelled. Their family's fraud came to light. Walking straight, the guy said that the hero who exorcised magicians, Ruin, got a new nickname. The protagonist took a step forward. Ruin stood in front of a huge gate. Suddenly a bright glow appeared around the hero. He was called to the head of the academy. Rays appeared around the protagonist. Ruin slightly clenched his teeth. Suddenly the hero looked in surprise. A view of a huge garden opened up in front of him and he thought that this was Ardal's territory. Looking straight ahead, he said that no, it was a little different. Suddenly something appeared in front of him and he said this too. There was a chair in front of the hero. He thought about what Tyrion's throne was, where the king of magicians sat, and then asked what was going on here. Suddenly a man appeared behind him, asking what he saw, to which he turned to him. Walking along a forest path, the leader said that the appearance of this place was created with the help of Maloroc's eye, asked what he knew, what it was, to which the protagonist replied that he had heard of it. Maloroc, this name belonged to the leader of the demons who invaded the continent of Frelia. They say he had the power to make the target see what it most desired. After Maloroc's fall, his parts were turned into artifacts. Looking to the side, Tyrion asked if Maloroc's eye shows the world he wants to see. The images around him are close to what he wants to see. Lowering his head, the protagonist thought that what he wanted to see was the flourishing of the Ardal territory and becoming the best magician. Turning to the hero, Tyrion asked what was interesting, what he saw here, to which the protagonist clarified what and what he saw. Looking at the hero, the leader said that a world in which students behave like students and magicians like magicians. Standing in front of the gate, the man said that of course, he understands that this is not easy to achieve, to which the protagonist confirmed. Suddenly, the gate opened slightly. The protagonist turned back. The students tossed Ruin and shouted that he won. The protagonist looked straight, listening to the fact that he is the best graduate. The protagonist grinned slightly. A table in the office appeared. Putting a cup on the table, the man said that Ruin should help himself, to which the hero thanked him. Tyrion silently watched the hero. The hero was surprised to hear that he called him because he wanted to ask something, and clarified that he would answer him, to which the protagonist replied that of course. The man folded his arms and asked how he could tell that Mikkel had used the flaming flower. The protagonist looked down. Sitting in front of the man, Ruin said that Mikkel was acting unusually. He immediately thought of the flaming flower because of his aggressive and at the same time anxious behavior. And the flow of mana around him was unusual, and the mana itself was strengthened. Tyrion leaned on the table and said that but based on what he saw, he did not suspect him of taking the flower but was sure of it, and asked what the reason was. The protagonist said that he used physical strength, not magic, and the mana barrier room suppresses only magic, without affecting physical strength, and then thought that there was no need to talk about the player's eye. Looking at the chapter, the hero said that even if Mikkel was in a state of shock, his laughter despite the injuries received can only be explained by the use of the flaming flower. The man thought about how, at 16, he was perceptive enough to instantly notice subtle changes in his opponent and was able to remain calm in critical situations, taking into account his undeniable magical abilities. Putting his hand on the table, Tyrion said that is the head of the academy. He was terribly sorry for what happened, apologized, and would personally ensure that their family did not harm him. The man raised his hand and added that he also had a proposal. The protagonist was surprised to hear that he would like to participate in the grand festival that would be held in the 7th month of this year as a representative of their academy. Hall's eyes widened and he thought that the representative of the academy at the grand festival, a status that everyone dreams of, had his suspicions even when he was called to the head of the academy's office. The protagonist closed his eyes and remained silent. The man was surprised to hear that he thanked him for his proposal. However, sitting in front of the head of the academy, the hero said that as far as he knew, he lacked experience, as he had not participated in a real battle for the past 5 years. Lowering his head, the protagonist said that due to the disorder of mana release, all events were close to him, so he did not know whether he could perform well in the grand festival against other talented peers. The hero was surprised to hear that this was not a problem at all. In fact, as a judge in the grand festival, he believed. Raising a finger, the head of the academy continued that he was more than worthy of being considered a candidate for victory, to which the hero asked again. Sitting in front of the hero, the man said that he could confidently say that he had every chance of winning, and what was much more frightening. The hero's eyes widened in surprise, hearing that he would become a secret weapon that appeared out of nowhere. The man sighed and said that from the opponent's point of view, he is a dark horse, there is no information about him, so they will not be able to develop methods and strategies against the magic he uses. The protagonist smirked and thought about that, so that's what it is, because he was always the last one. No one looked at him. Unlike Mikkel, they have no data on him, so it will be easy to catch them off guard. The protagonist clenched his fists tightly, hearing that he would say whether he was going to participate. Looking straight ahead, Ruin said that he would do his best to justify his trust. Someone knocked on the door, and the man said that it was just in time, let him come in. Looking at the knight, the head of the academy said that he assumed that it would be more useful for him to attend body art classes than magic, especially for this he invited a martial arts professor. The protagonist looked surprised and thought about this man and then heard how the desperate student was doing. The knight, looking at the hero, asked what was wrong with his face, not happy to see him, to which the hero thought it was Gulthur. He is the leader of the knightly order of the Foldron territory, one of the 5 knights of the 6th rank and the only one in the kingdom of Radian. And the hero crossed paths with him during the 3rd stage of the practical exam. Sitting in front of the knight, the protagonist thought about who would have thought that he would have the opportunity to receive instructions from him, and Gulthur said that first he needed to confirm something. Looking straight ahead, the man said that according to Professor Heidel, he is a special magician who is forced to fight exclusively at close range, and asked if this is so. The hero nodded his head and said yes, that's right. The hero's battle was shown, and the man said that from the last time he could say that his attacks were pretty good, clear and without unnecessary movements. The hero was surprised to hear that, however, he would be frank, it was too obvious that he had not studied martial arts properly. Sitting in front of the hero, the man said that his skills could work against the ogre, but a skilled knight would read him like an open book no matter how strong he was. Opponents who studied the art of the body would be able to figure out his next moves just by looking at the movements of his shoulders and hips. The protagonist put his hands on his knees and thought that he was right, his movements were the result of repeating the same blows within the framework of tasks, so their use in practice was very limited. The knight rose and said that there was no need to worry, after his lessons he would be able to advance beyond the basics. Looking at the hero, Gulthur asked, well, why don't they start right now? The castle wall appeared. The man said that the most important thing for a knight is his legs. They give strength to the sword and allow you to predict the enemy's actions, so first you need to learn how to walk correctly. The hero walked straight, and the man said that only after that can you begin studying the art of the body. The protagonist swung his hand, and Gulthur said that the training center usually teaches celestial martial arts. Ruin slashed into the air. The knight standing behind him added that excluding sword techniques, celestial martial arts include 36 fighting techniques. The protagonist gritted his teeth and swung his hand. The protagonist slashed into the air many times. The knight watched the training. Looking straight ahead, Gulthur wondered why. A memory surfaced of the protagonist saying that his training would not bring him any benefit. He would have to come to the academy every day, so why? Looking straight ahead, the hero heard that if an answer was needed, they would say that this was a kind of investment, to which the hero asked again. The man closed his eyes and said that he should imagine that he was meeting a person who could become a great magician if he could provide him with at least some help. The hero wondered after hearing that this would not be considered a worthwhile investment. The hero bowed and said that in that case, he was at his service. Putting his hand to his face, Gulther said that it was impossible to listen to this, it was becoming terribly awkward. Let him just call him Gulther, he was not even 30, to which the hero asked, "What the hell?" The main character struck with his fist. The training process appeared. Looking straight ahead, the man thought that he was doing well, the guy was not lacking in endurance. The knight looked at the monster, and it was heard that the ogre's jaw was broken. Leaning on a tree, Gulther thought about how a melee mage was physically stronger than an ogre. What an interesting young man. 3 weeks passed like this. It was written that the level of the body art skill had been increased, the body art skill had reached level 10, the achievement of the whole body as a weapon had been received. As a reward, the effect of the madness mage skill had been improved, now he could fill every part of his body with magic. The protagonist raised his hands in surprise. Looking at Ted, the protagonist said that the effect of mastering the heavenly martial art was incredible, yes indeed, to which he replied that yes, thanks to this he had advanced to rank 3. It was written that the strength was 2130 and the protagonist clenched his fist and said that he felt enormous strength. Sighing, the bear said that he was getting stronger surprisingly quickly. He had once gained 2000 for more than a year and another 6 months after meeting him. To which the protagonist asked that perhaps it was due to the difference in the perception of time between a person and a dragon. The protagonist turned around, hearing that someone had addressed him. Ruin looked at the guy and asked what happened. Jason, breathing heavily, asked what he hadn't seen yet, to which the hero clarified that he hadn't seen what. The hero was perplexed to hear that a list of participants in the Great Festival was posted at the entrance to the academy, to which the hero thought that it was the Great Festival. At the entrance ceremony, he introduced new students and spoke from the stage. Because of this, they envied him and cast distrustful glances at him. Postifying their secret hopes, all these years he showed himself only from the pitiful side. And he could only watch from afar as Mikkel received all the laurels. The hero rushed forward, now. Ruin and Jason ran to the top. Clenching his fist, the hero exclaimed joyfully. Looking at the participants, he thought that he really became a representative. The students turned around in surprise and called the hero. Suddenly everyone ran up. Shouting that they congratulated him on the place of the representative, he would speak on his behalf at the Great Festival. The hero smiled. It took a long time, but he became the representative of the academy again. Looking straight ahead, the professor said that he was surprised to hear from Sir Gulther that he had mastered the celestial martial art. Looking at the hero, Heidel said that to get the 5th class at 16, sometimes his genius frightened him. The man grinned, adding that he believed that he could handle it. Preparations for the Great Festival went smoothly, after which they went to Altain, the place where the festival was held. In the crowd, they heard talk that they would take the Manna Express. He would ride it for the first time. He heard that it was incredibly fast. The hero closed his eyes, listening to the fact that in the Kingdom of Radian there are only 2 transit points, but they say that in the Imperial Federation of Reanites there are more than 100. Well, it is understandable, it is an empire, and a kingdom smaller than them is still to be found. The guys looked away in surprise, hearing that the redneck, as if he had never seen a train. Jason asked again, to which the guy replied that he should shut up and not embarrass himself. The protagonist looked away, listening to what he had said. The guy folded his arms, and the hero thought that this freak's name was Henki's Singalong, who had taken part in the magic festival with him last year. Looking at Jason, the guy said that if he thought that Ruin would work a miracle at the Great Festival, then he should not hope. He was proud, although he only got good grades for the first semester. The guy leaned slightly and said that for sure, representatives of other academies were like ghosts, they would have more chances if they chose Mikkel as their representative, who had already fought against them. The guy angrily asked again, hearing that in any case, they did not recognize Ruin as their representative, so let them cope on their own. Looking away, the protagonist thought that many people strive to gain an advantage by somehow currying favor with Michael's family, but they are obliged to perform well even if someone does not agree with their candidacy. The guy was surprised to hear that Mikkel would be flattered. Grinning, Ruin said that his dogs remained loyal even when the owner was thrown out of the academy. Looking at the hero, Hanker asked what he called them, to which the protagonist replied that thank God, he realizes that he deliberately expressed himself as clearly as possible so that even a person of your level of intelligence would understand everything. Standing in front of the hero, the guy said that he is only a representative of the academy, and the hero interrupted him and said that he should listen. The protagonist lowered his head and said that this festival would be a level higher than those he attended. If he achieves good results in it, he will receive opportunities better than his connections with Michael's family could give him. The boy furiously shouted that of course, but this can only be said if they achieve something. And is it possible? Those who were chosen to participate in the festival are all monsters. In the end, their fate is to be stuck in the Radiant Kingdom and work under the leadership of the family, so let him come down to earth. The boy was surprised to hear that this was possible. Turning around, Ruin said that the Grand Festival is an event in which cooperation plays an important role, so it is better not to use those who interfere with teamwork. Looking at him, Hanker asked what he meant by competing without them. Looking back, the protagonist replied that he suggests that they think about who their representative is now while they are on the way. The boy furiously gritted his teeth when he heard that and also reminded that there is no one from their family here to evaluate their loyalty. Looking at the hero, Hanker furiously shouted that he should just try to lose in his first individual battle, or he would not listen to a single command from him at the Grand Festival. The train moved forward rapidly. The students, looking around, said how fast. Standing on the hero's shoulder, Strang said that while the world has become a great place, in his time there were no such fast ways to travel. Suddenly the door swung open. The hero looked away, hearing that it seemed to him that he smelled losers. Standing at the end of the coach, the guy asked who they had here, a country bumpkin from the academy. Looking at the guy's clothes, the protagonist wondered if this symbol, the Yoda National Magic Institute. The Yoda National Magic Institute, the only educational institution in Yoda, the same kingdom of the desert, is known for its ancient history and is also famous for the reverence of its school of swordsmanship and for extreme body training. Looking away, the protagonist thought, by the way, what are they doing here? The guy grinned and asked where Mikkel was. He didn't run away because of some nonsense. Yes, he said that he wanted to ask him to take care of them this year too. The guy added that as a servant, of course, and then laughed. Walking along the carriage, he asked that this year they would also take the last place. Yes, he offered to get along. The bear smiled and asked if he was too calm, and said that after such words he didn't even bat an eyelid. Looking at the guy, the protagonist thought that he didn't participate in such events, so he didn't even guess that they were so openly oppressed. The protagonist looked away. The man was reading a book, and the hero thought that the professor was not going to stand up for him. The Great Festival was a competition for students and at the moment he was playing the role of an ordinary escort. Ruin looked down and thought that now the power and responsibility for the team was in his hands as a representative of the academy. Leaning on the seat, the guy greeted Hanker and asked where his representative was hiding. Mikkel, who, with him, at least, was interesting, to which the guy replied that now Mikkel. The guy turned around in surprise, hearing that most likely he was lying in bed and praying that his broken ribs would heal correctly. The main character stood up abruptly. Looking at the guy, Hanker said that this was their current representative. Turning around, the guy asked what he was, and said that he was seeing him for the first time. The guy took a few steps forward. Approaching the hero, the guy said that he was a representative from Ojoda. Sita asked what his name was. Looking at him, the main character replied that it was Ruin. Seeing the hero, he added that this was enough for the first acquaintance. If he was finished with finding problems, then let him get out of their cart, to which Sita asked again. Grinning, the main character said that although, before that, he will apologize for all the insults voiced, right, in a polite manner. Ruin clarifies whether he will apologize for all the words spoken and asks again if he is right that he will do it in a polite manner. The bald man is angrily perplexed. He asks if he told him to apologize. He clarifies with the Hanker if he told his new representative anything about him, to which he does not know what to answer. The bald man shouts with a question about whether he can at least once do everything right and adds that he will hit him again so that he will remember it for the rest of his life. Ruin realizes what is going on here. He looks at them and realizes that apparently the students who participated in the magic festival are trembling in his presence. Ruin frowns and continues that it is because they were attacked by the Valkyrie set. He looks at the other frightened people and realizes that this is their plan, namely to trample the morale of their opponents before the battle itself. Ruin looks away and says that the great festival has already begun. He turns to the bald man and says that in that case, he does not want to sort it out on the spot, to which he asks him again because he thinks he is crazy. He goes with fists and clarifies if he thinks that he will cringe from such words and asks him not to regret it later. The man in the cloak asks him to stop. The bald man recognizes him as his professor. He orders him to sit down and calm down and asks what kind of fuss he made and if he wants to make enemies from the very beginning. He turns to the man in glasses and states that his students were rude and asked to be allowed to apologize for them, to which he agrees. The professor grabs the guy by the hair and orders him to quickly return to his cart, to which he protests. The guy turns to Ruin and says that he will deal with him later. The hanker looks after him and thinks that he thought so, that it would not be easy from the very beginning. He asks the professor why he stopped them. The bald man continues that he himself suggested this method to them and clarifies what changed. He exhales and asks again if he really did not notice, to which he is perplexed. The professor says that he was smiling, to which the bald man does not understand. The man in the cloak looks at Heidel and continues that the academy professor smirked while watching him as if he was just waiting for a fight to start. The guy clarifies whether this was confidence, to which he replies that he cannot know for sure. He remembers Ruin and says that that guy named Ruin definitely has something they don't know about and he's definitely different from his previous opponent. The bald guy looks at him thoughtfully. The plot says that after a short showdown with that guy, the atmosphere in the cart changed. People crowded around Ruin and asked what about the first battle, because the first match will be a group competition without a representative and someone asks if Ruin will join him and someone else asks if they can handle it. The hanker shouts that they can handle it and they simply have to win, to which the others say that this is true and they can't lose to these freaks. Ruin looks at him enthusiastically and thinks that from a certain point these guys filled with envy and egoism began to unite. Someone asks him if everything is okay. The hanker says that he acted too rashly, because those strong guys literally grew up in battles, and the second continues that he is right and if in fact a brawl had begun. Ruin asks if they are angry. The hanker says that these freaks do not respect them and do not respect him, their representative, and do not hide this fact at all, and asks what would have happened if he had not answered them. Against the background of the windows, he continues that they would only be happy and would have started to laugh at them even more. The guy convinces them that if he had kept silent, they would have fully justified the mocking nickname given to them and asks again if this is what they want. The guys squint while he asks if they want to continue to tolerate such disrespect. He shouts that they allowed them to beat them up and that is why they have been dragging them through the mud for 5 years in a row. Ruin asks them what they are going to do and adds that he does not think that now is the time to fight purely out of selfish delusions. The guy answers that he is thinking of leaving his friend at the gate and clarifies his opinion on this matter, to which he asks again if he is talking about him. The hanker crosses his arms over his chest and thinks that, judging by everything, Mikkel's yes men have decided to side with him and realizes that they should maintain the same attitude until the very end. At the station, they announce that the next stop is the Principality of Altain, to which the guys realize that they are there and someone gives the command to take their things and leave. Against the background of the map, a voiceover tells about this duchy because it is a state that is part of the Imperial Federation and only it is recognized as neutral in the Empire. On this land they must put aside their emotions even if they have been implacable enemies for decades. The knights are ready to fight back while he continues that if bloodshed occurs on the Principality of Altain, then the Empire will hold a trial of the criminals and the person of the ruler of the continent and repay them for the atrocities they have committed. Emblems of empires, and he explains that due to this state of affairs, large-scale international competitions such as the upcoming Magic Festival for magicians and the Sword Grand Prix for sword masters are held in this territory. People are stunned and someone asks if this is the same empire, to which someone tells him that he is an idiot and that this is not an empire, but an imperial federation under the control of the empire. And he asks again what the difference is. The blonde says that everything is completely different here and asks Ruin his impressions. But he himself continues that he comes from a territory that is considered a fairly rich region, but he simply cannot compare it to this place. Ruin here looks ahead and thinks about this Imperial Federation. He looks at the locals and thinks that this is what one would expect from the capital of a kingdom. The girls laugh and he continues that noble antiquity blows from everywhere and the residents carefully walk the streets. He looks around and thinks that this sight once again makes it clear that they came from a very small place. A chariot pulls up and someone says that they are now heading to a place of temporary residence and asks to get into the carriages. The man continues that he is not hinting at anything. The man in glasses continues that he hopes that none of them will go to the participants from other schools, even by mistake. The man lowers his head and says that nothing good will come of starting a fight. Ruin is puzzled and asks why he said that, looking into his eyes. Strang calls out to him and asks him to look. Ruin asks again what happened and he repeats his request. The guy looks in surprise while the bear adds that a very interesting smell is coming from there. Strang jumps off. He looks ahead and tries to compare it to something. The bear imagines the creature and replies that a relic of a drag is located here. The plot moves forward a day to the premises of the Ignite Academy. The blonde sleepily looks at Ruin and asks where he is going, if he is going on a date. The guy flies out of the door without answering. He asks Strange if he is sure about his statement from yesterday, to which he shows him a mini-map and says that he will see everything on it in an hour because even for an avatar of power like him this is unusual. The bear directs him to a workshop called Touching Memories. The guy opens the doors. Ruin says that he thought that the item used by the Black Dragon himself would be in a more unusual place and adds that it is somehow too ordinary here. He imagines greedy people and thinks that he previously imagined that he would end up on the black market or a rich man's warehouse, and Strangleplays that the drag relic is useless for mages who do not use power-based magic, and for them that item will become equal to ordinary trash. Ruin uses the ability of the player's eyes. A huge source of light illuminates everything. Ruin looks at the spark ahead. A pop-up window notifies him that he has a ring of invulnerability in front of him. It is an exclusive unique artifact of the player and continues to be the first artifact created by the fight. But also his first failure, and that using the power of invulnerability there is a small chance to withstand any physical force that affected the player's body. It also increases the chance to nullify all physical damage. Strange clarifies that there is one nuance. He continues that it is not only about attacks. Resistance will arise even from the touch of a friend or the embrace of a loved one. Ruin listens carefully that the effect may not activate when it is really needed and at the same time calmly work on something ordinary, therefore the failure. But nevertheless the guy needs it, to which he agrees. The window notifies that there was an increase in strength by 200 points and this alone is worth putting on. The guy puts the ring on his finger. He understands that it sits on him like a glove and as if it was created for him. Ruin approaches the seller and says that he would like to buy this ring and asks how much it will cost. Grandpa shakes his head and says that he can just take it, because it has been lying there for many years and he did not even know what to do with it. Ruin says that in this case he will take something else from him, to which he replies that he does not mind. Ruin says that the player's eye is indeed a very useful skill. He looks at the objects in the room and can determine their quality, saying that you can even determine the value of an object. He notices something in front of him. Ruin sees a book with a high rarity rating. It is about quantum mechanisms of magic and swords and he realizes that he needs it. The guy runs to it, but the blonde intercepts her. Ruin looks at her with displeasure. Ruin sees a 5th class mage in front of him. Her potential is estimated to be very high and recognizes her as Irene from the Women's University. He thinks about the king known as the King of Magicians and the King of the Border. The girl is standing behind the crowd. He continues that he chose 11 magicians who should represent the next generation and she is among them. Ruin thinks that he heard that she is a genius, close to reaching the 5th level. She frowns ahead, while he continues that she is already a 5th class mage and it turns out that the rumors even underestimated the reality. The girl asks him to give her the book, to which she receives in response that he touched her first. She replies that judging by the symbols on his uniform, he is from the academy and tells his name and where she is from and adds that he found what he was looking for. And now he decided to find something else to buy while she came specifically for this book. The guy solemnly listens to the proposal that if he does not care, could he give it to her, and he understands that she overheard everything and this is because they are both participating in the great festival. Ruin asks in this case to answer him why she needs the book, because such books are not just looked for. The girl is confused, trying to come up with a plausible answer. She looks away and answers that this is part of her individual assignment and she cannot devote him to the details and asks not to ask her about it. The guy understands that this is unlikely from the educational institution and wonders if this could be an order from the king. Ruin gives her the book, to which she does not believe what she heard and he explains that she said that it is important to her and offers her to take it. The girl thanks him. She watches him looking for a new object to buy. The blonde doesn't know what to say. Someone asks Ruin if he met Irene and what they talked about and asks if she is really as beautiful as they say. The blonde asks where and under what circumstances he met her, to which Ruin asks them to ask at least in turn. The blonde replies that he is very jealous, because he dreams of touching her hand at least once and he is perplexed by what kind of dreams he has. The guy bursts out laughing and says that he's incredibly pathetic and that he also saw her at the Great Festival and even sat next to her during it, but he is interrupted by a question whether he spoke to her. The guy is perplexed and asks again whether he crossed paths with her at least. Another hanker continues that in any case, that girl is strong, but always takes second place and he heard that she is terribly worried about eternal losses to the first place, to which the blonde clarifies what kind of nonsense is this and how dare he speak like that about his Irene. Ruin crosses his arms, not understanding when she began to belong to someone and replies that this is not nonsense at all, because we are talking about number one in the special school of combat magicians, from which it follows that he is the most recognized among all his peers on the continent. The hanker clarifies that he also has a shining sword and Ruin is perplexed. The guy realizes that he understands the reason why the girl wanted to get that book so much in order to defeat that swordsman. He continues that however, it is not so cool to be a magical swordsman, because a magical sword, in comparison with other weapons, does not provide a pronounced increase in magic and besides, becoming a skilled master of the sword is also not so easy. The hanker adds that the first place has always been different from the others, the shining sword is a high-class artifact and his level of swordsmanship is at least the same as the average knight if he is not mistaken. The blonde frowns and continues that he has an artifact, good swordsmanship skills and a talent for magic. Yes, he will die of envy from such geniuses, because on top of that there is also a good wealthy family and good looks, his popularity among girls is simply off the charts. While Ruin is thinking, he continues that he did not think that such people even exist. The hanker thinks about the girl, because at 16 she became a 5th level mage and her opponent is a magical swordsman who defeats her every year. He thinks that if he fights against these famous geniuses, will he be able to win? Ruin remembers the incident on the train, saying that he is definitely someone no one considers a threat, but nevertheless says that he is more than worthy of being considered a candidate for victory. The boy frowned and thought that he wanted to make sure that his words were true. Someone burst in shouting that it was time for the first team to gather outside for the opening day of the Great Festival. Ruin braced himself. He stood up and walked towards the door. His mind was spinning around the upcoming festival. He realized that it was starting. It was time for the opening matches of the Great Festival. Ruin looked away, thinking about his opponents. No one could understand why their first opponent after the academy. Everyone was surprised at their easy victory. The boy laughed, answering that he was lucky that they fell first. Ruin angrily understood that these were the worst opponents for them. These guys were always known for their dirty play. The protagonist did not understand why they were there, and also answered that many in the academy were traumatized from interacting with them. The heroes laughed, answering that this was the most boring fight. Ruin heard the guys answer that they were very scared, because of which they could not do anything. The hero decided to take the opportunity to show what he could do. Ruin smiled, confidently looking forward. The guy looked at the hero who was calling him with bewilderment. Ruin answered with a smile on his face that he saw that besides them, many other participants of the Great Festival had gathered. Ruin answered that he wanted to introduce himself. The hero stood and shouted that his name was Ruin and that he was a representative of the so-called After Academy, which everyone was discussing here. The guy looked forward with displeasure. The main hero asked not to call them that, because it was unpleasant. The hero looked at this with anger, not knowing what to say. Ruin laughed, saying that he had been in last place for a long time and now he was tired of it. The hero decided to try to get to first. The guys shouted loudly. The guy asked Ruin with bewilderment who he was to be able to say such a thing. The hero immediately remembered Tyrion. Ruin confidently answered that he was a secret weapon that would no longer retreat. Everyone began to talk about this guy. One of the heroes answered that he had done some research and found out that he had failed at everything before. The hero answered that at the beginning of the semester, he had changed dramatically and had become a monster with amazing results. Everyone understood that this was the reason for his confidence. The hero immediately remembered something. The guy sighed, not understanding what he was even thinking about. He stood up, pulling himself up and saying that he would teach these guys a lesson. The hero answered that it would be a traditional method for their university. The academy building. Tomorrow was supposed to be the throw mono grenades, a team competition in which everyone participates except the representative. The essence is to throw guarantees filled with mana at a mithril golem. The team that destroys their golem faster wins. The guy asked Ruin if he could handle it. The hero agreed that they lacked talented students. The guy knew how to win. Ruin understood that this was a group competition, so if they worked together, they could win. The heroes were surprised to hear the guy suggesting that they form groups. The first group would heat up the mono grenades, the second would move them, and the third team would directly attack the golem, and a fourth group would be needed to restore the enemy golem. Ruin offered the guys new ideas. The hero looked away carefully. Ruin asked the guys what they thought. The guy answered that now they would be first, not last. Ruin knew that he would do everything to achieve this. The hero understood that while those guys were throwing nade, ours needed to throw 2, 3 so that there would be more time for them. The guys shouted that they trusted the guy. Ruin then shouted one after another. The team was under the command of the girl. Wakan was moving the nade. The guy divided the guys into groups, taking into account their strengths. The guy's ability was behind this choice. The player's eye is the ability to see the essence of the goal. With its help, Ruin was able to minimize weaknesses and focus on the strengths of the group. The guys smiled, answering that they had a good chance of winning. As soon as everyone got into a perfectly suitable group for themselves, even the guys who doubted him began to penetrate. The guy watched everyone carefully. The team members became more confident in themselves. The guys began to hope for victory. The door opened and a guy ran into it. The beaten hero tiredly on the ground began to call Ruin. The guy asked him in confusion who did this to him. Ruin realized that they did it on purpose. Were sitting on the couches. The door opened and Ruin began to enter. The main one answered that he knew that the guy would come to them like a sweetheart. The guy confidently and calmly began to call one guy to come to him. Voices were heard from their building. Sita laughed, shouting that the hero was crazy. The guy in confusion asked Ruin why he was acting so impudently. The hero touched the guy's shoulder. His hand began to squeeze more and more. Sita fell to his haunches in displeasure. The hero did not understand what Ruin had just allowed himself to do. Sita quickly stood up and began to point his fist at Ruin. The main hero quickly grabbed his hand, holding it tightly. Ruin smiled, looking at the guy who was screaming loudly in pain. The hero looked at the hero calmly and said that he was warning him that if he touched him outside the arena again, it would end very badly. Sita was lying on the ground in pain. Sita was full of anger. Ruin looked at him with a smile, asking if he wanted to make a bet. Shouts were coming from the house. Ruin was telling all the guys that if they won, Sita would get a flick on the face as well as an apology. Everyone was shouting that they had to win now since they had real motivation. The hero was shouting that it was time for them to go to the Altane Stadium. The festival of magicians held for the entire continent, the Great Festival. Magicians who had distinguished themselves in some way within the festival participated in it. They all became important people, writing their names in the history of the continent. Everyone was shouting Ignite Academy. Ruin understood that he had become part of the festival in which legends were created. The man shouted that the ceremony was over and all the students should return to their seats. The hero walked forward slowly. He began to look away. Sita shouted discontentedly at Ruin to be ready because this time he would not let down his guard. The guy looked at the hero, who was slowly leaving. Ruin understood that now he was trying to analyze someone else. The hero looked away. All attention was on the prime spirits. The guy was thinking about the winner of the magic festival, who was a leader in each discipline in the special school of combat magicians. Ruin understood that if they won victory after victory, they would be able to meet him. The main character began to be called back. Irene smiled, looking at the guy. The girl told Ruin that he had created real chaos. The hero was surprised that the girl answered that he even went into an open conflict by visiting the institute house. The guy asked Irene and was surprised how she knew all this. The hero laughed, answering that he did not go into a conflict and just wanted to talk. Irene calmly replied that it was better for the guy not to stand out. The heroine looked at Ruin and surprised, who asked her about hiding his true skills, as she did. Ruin ran away, answering that he was participating in the first match and it was time for him to go. The heroine continued to look at him and was surprised. In just a few minutes, throw mono grenades would begin. The Ignite Academy and the Institute would be the first to participate. The guys asked each other if they were all ready. The heroes decided to prove that they were strong. A few seconds later, the team ran away. When the first competition began, people were confused. This was because previously in team competitions, those who had outstanding people won. The division into groups within one team, inherent in night competitions, was never common in competitions for magicians. The heroes were surprised that the team was divided into groups of warmers and throwers. Ruin heard everyone shouting at them that they would be the last. The girl looked away. She couldn't understand how this was possible. The golem from the Ignite Academy had already lost its arm. Everyone was shouting at them to keep going. Ruin was shouting loudly, telling everyone what to do. The golem's right arm was destroyed. His teeth were clenched in anger. Sita was asking his team with displeasure why they were being stupid and losing after the academy. Everyone was shouting that they were behaving unusually and that some people were healing the golem, so it couldn't fall. The hero looked away with displeasure. Margot was very impressed. Everyone understood that the reason why the academy was winning was about skills, which is where the strategy lies. Margot knew that this approach would only work if there was a clear understanding of everyone's strengths. The girl remembered that Ruin had quickly found the book she was looking for. He also divided the guys into groups, who was better at what. The girl didn't understand what kind of person he was and how it happened that she hadn't seen him at any competition. The ball was burning brightly in his hands. The guy was shouting loudly that it was all over now. The whole golem was glowing with light, breaking into pieces. Sita looked forward in fear. His face was radiating anger. The golem calmly fell to the ground. The guys were shouting joyfully that they had finally copped and won. The great festival, the first competition. Throwing the mono grenade, which was expected to end with the victory of the institute, ended differently. The whole competition ended with the victory after the academy. The competition for the representatives of Grab the Flag would soon begin. All the guys did not believe that after the academy was no longer in last place and that the institute was now there. The first match would be between Ruin, a representative of the Ignite Magic Academy, and Sita, a representative of the National Magic Institute. The guys stood opposite each other. Strang asked the guy with a smile if he was worried. Ruin calmly looked away and said that now they were the 20th out of 32 educational institutions, which was ideal. After the last victory, people started to show interest again. But it was still not enough to remove the label that was attached to him because of the failures of the past years. For the guy, it was an overwhelming victory. Ruin understood that if they had an overwhelming victory against the institute, the others would start to look at it differently. Strang continued to smile. The hero looked ahead. He understood that they had to prove themselves to him, the king of the wizards. A group of people sat at a table, looking at a magic ball. Sita and Ruin were shown in it. Theron looked away attentively. Theron looked at Tyrion, answering that he used to consider him a candidate for the next generation. Theron said with a smile on his face that this guy was born with such a huge talent that he was able to instinctively learn magic at a young age. The man answered that he was disappointed when he learned that he had a mono-release disorder. Tyrion asked him in surprise that he was not considered a useless child. Theron continued to smile. Theron calmly replied that since this student, who was not able to cast spells properly, was chosen to represent the academy, he did not think that Tyrion was keeping something in reserve as before. Tyrion looked at Ruin, telling everyone to watch this. Strang looked at the guy, asking what he would do if he needed to get closer. The beast asked the hero what his plan was. Ruin confidently answered that he would fight with his forehead. The man shouted that they were starting the match. The duel began. Sita directed all his power, shouting that he would repay what was done before. The summoning of the combat protector began. The knight was fully armored. Ruin began to use time distortion. The hero quickly ran to the sides. Sita looked ahead in confusion. The hero looked away with displeasure. Ruin stood next to him, holding a fist in his hand. The guy laughed, shouting that he knew it. Sita asked him in surprise if he was going to let go. The protagonist calmly answered the guy that he didn't think it was time to just chat with him. The knight pointed his weapon at the guys. Sita scaredly shouted for him to stop. The guy worriedly looked away. Sita clenched his teeth, shouting that he couldn't move. Ruin, with a smile on his face, told him to try to leave on his own. Sita scaredly realized that that power was real and it wasn't because he let his guard down. The knight pointed his sword at Sita and he himself understood that he had lost. His eyes were narrowed. After a while, Sita opened them slightly. Ruin directed firepower at Knight. The hero scaredly answered that all of this was impossible. Sita was surprised that Ruin had hit his steel protector with his bare hands. The knight began to break down. Ruin looked forward. After a while, the hero approached Sita. The guy asked the hero in surprise that he had saved him. Ruin asked him how he could save the one who had bullied his classmate. The hero smiled, answering that he wanted to finish him off himself. Ruin, with a smile on his face, asked Sita if he had forgotten about their bet. The hero answered that he would give him one flick. Sita flew away quickly and far. The guy looked at the sky in surprise, shouting that it was very beautiful. People looked ahead in surprise. The team shouted joyfully, the stadium filled with applause. Ruin smiled, looking attentively at everyone. Tyrion looked into the magic ball with interest. The man looked down without turning his head. Theron understood that he was at the demigod stage and he was the only mage of the 8th class known as the King of the Border, but nevertheless, even he had never heard of such magic. The eyes were scared. Ruin was shown in the magic ball. Theron looked at the guy in surprise, not fully understanding who he really was. The man was starting to get angry. Theron began to ask Tyrion to tell everything he knew about the guy. Tyrion calmly answered that he was a model student who, according to everyone's expectations, could have given up but fought to the end. He was the one who turned his weakness into strength and he was the magician who behaved like one more than anyone else. Theron looked at the floor with displeasure. Theron was thinking about what he could say. Theron began to think about calling him himself and then asking him directly. Tyrion looked away. The man knew that he would have to be stopped. Theron smiled. Theron asked the guy about what he was going to remind him about the fact that magicians have the right to keep their technique secret. Theron, with a smile on his face, asked if they could exchange a few words. Theron knew that he was the only one who should stand at the top of the magicians, so the hero would do everything to learn about this magic he had seen for the first time. The guy smiled sweetly. Ruin answered discontentedly that they had only won one competition, and had not even prepared for the rest. All the guys were shouting to enjoy the evening. The guy, with a smile on his face, told Ruin to celebrate their first victory since this was a festival after all. Local coconut vanilla juice and dragon's kiss were already on the table. Ruin looked at the dragon's kiss in surprise. The hero laughed, answering that this was Lupin's drink from his territory. Everyone knew that from just one sip, Ruin would feel like he had shared a kiss with a dragon. It was a great drink. The guy smiled, pouring the drink. Ruin looked away in confusion. Sita stood next to the guy with a sad look. The hero looked at the guy in surprise. The guy angrily asked Sita to leave him alone. Lee replied that he came to ask for forgiveness. All the guys were very surprised by this. The hero asked the team to forgive him for always looking down on him. Sita sadly replied that after losing, he realized that he shouldn't consider others inferior to him just because they were weaker. The hero calmly replied that there were many people in this world who were stronger than him. At that moment Sita felt that his past actions were fundamentally wrong. The hero sadly replied that a person can't change so easily. Sita still said that he was sorry. Ruin calmly looked at him. All the guys felt awkward. Sita apologized for ruining the atmosphere. Sita turned around. Ruin looked at Sita, asking if these were real feelings. Sita sadly replied that it was all sincere. Ruin smiled. The boy thanked Sita for having the courage to apologize. Sita looked at the floor. 2 hands were shaking each other. The other boys also accepted the boy's apology and then they all started celebrating together. They dangled their arms over each other's shoulders, drank Dragon's Kiss and immersed themselves in the intoxicating atmosphere. Ruin looked away, scared. The boys asked him with a smile on his face if he was awake. The hero rubbed his head tiredly. The boys asked him if he remembered what happened yesterday. The heroes answered that Ruin was screaming and thanking them for believing in him. The boys laughed, not believing that the hero had such a side. Ruin did not understand what they were doing. He understood that now he should not drink a drink that makes you overly emotional. Someone started calling Ruin. Sita, with a smile on his face, asked him if he got enough sleep. The hero remembered with surprise how he spent time with the boy. Sita shouted to Ruin that they would see each other again. Ruin quickly left. The professor looked at the guy. The man answered discontentedly that he was always in trouble. Ruin heard him say that someone was calling him. The professor answered that the head of the academy seemed worried. Ruin answered in surprise that it was Theron. The man wanted to meet the guy. The professor asked the guy to be careful since Theron was completely secret. The man answered that people who hide their true nature, like the king, are dangerous. Ruin looked at the floor. The hero confidently answered that he understood everything. The whole group of people laughed and shouted to Ruin. The guy smiled, answering that now they had another reason to win. The team did not understand what the hero wanted from them. Ruin decided to run straight to the gate. Arrow ball is a game in which the role of the ball is a living arrow, constantly flying around the field. 9 participants are divided into teams of attackers, defenders and a goalkeeper. The team that sends more arrows into the opponent's goal wins. Despite the simple rules, the game requires the development of complex strategies and tactics. Someone used defensive spells. Someone used crowd control magic. No one knew how to grab the arrow ball and send it into the goal, and so on. For this you need to take into account many aspects. Shouted that it all started. The guy quickly ran forward, began to direct an ice tree. Someone created an ice spear. One of directed a wall of fire. The guys fought with each other. Sita shouted at Ruin to go forward. The team looked at their leader in surprise and did not understand what happened. Yesterday he was hysterical because of the loss, and now he was shouting at Ruin. The hero shouted discontentedly to his guys that real men become friends after exchanging blows. One of the guys laughed. Everyone looked at Sita with incomprehension. Sita looked ahead. The man knew that after the match he was convinced that Ruin was a next-generation man. All the guys were strong, and Sita knew this because he personally competed with them as part of the Magic Festival. But Sita knew that Ruin was the strongest of them all. It was not only about strength. Ruin had leadership skills and was always able to make peace. The Institute responded that they were next and they needed to discuss strategy. Someone shouted to stop Ruin. The heroes shouted in fear that they were doing everything possible to do this. Ruin quickly ran in different directions. The guy with a smile on his face shouted that now it was their turn. Ruin quickly directed all his strength. Fists were pointed forward. The guy looked forward. The team of people ran in fear from ice shards. Some guy shouted for everyone to run away so that nothing would hit them, saying that they should be wary of not only Ruin. Everyone shouted that they needed to quickly stop the guys because they grabbed the arrow ball. Ruin quickly threw all his magic at everyone. The score was already 1 point. A few seconds later another point appeared. Even after that, the enemy team concentrated their efforts on Ruin. Other team members successfully used the opening loophole. When the enemy's attention weakened and they could not stop their team, the defensive formation immediately collapsed. People could not believe it. In the game, 3 minutes 4 points were usually expected. The team immediately admitted their defeat and the winner of the match was the Academy. Ruin was happy that the Academy won with a stunning margin of 11 points. Everyone understood that the guy could really win. The heroes laughed, realizing that they could become the first. Someone began to call Ruin. The professor came to him. He answered that the meeting time was set. Ruin knew that at 7 in the evening, during dinner, there would be a meeting. A glass of wine was brought to his lips. Theron looked away. The man told the guy not to eat anything and wait for the meeting. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to press the subscribe button and leave feedback.